We'll see if we can find anybody that wants to know the truth out there today. It's amazing how brainwashed people are. People don't even evaluate whether the Bible is true. They just assume the Bible is true, and then they accept all the mythological, supernatural stories as true because they start with the faulty assumption that the Bible is reliable. The Bible is not reliable. It's just like a comic book with supernatural stories, with supernatural characters that never existed. Jesus never existed. That's why nobody wrote about him during his lifetime. He is a supernatural character just like Spider-Man or Batman or Wolverine. And they didn't even think to create this character until after the Romans destroyed the Jews in war, and they needed to create a post-war narrative that would change Judaism because the Jews revolted against Rome. So Rome needed to change Judaism. Thanks, Deborah. Commander Binks, we don't have souls. We don't live after we die. So you're not going to go to heaven when you die. And you can either waste your entire life believing in mythological fantasies, or you can use your brain and understand the truth before you die. So I would say salvation is learning the truth rather than wasting your life on mythological fantasies. Demons are not real. Demon possession is not real. So you think, so when the church creates a disease so they can create the cure. So demon possession is not real. But since the church created demon possession, they obviously have the power to cast them out because they're not even real. So what they're doing is they're playing on your gullibility and your weak-mindedness to believe whatever nonsense they tell you to believe. And they say, oh, this person has a demon. And oh, wow, now the demon's gone. Because we splashed holy water on it and prayed in the name of Jesus. So hell is fake. Heaven is fake. Sin is fake. Jesus is fake. The Bible is fake. But you're building your entire worldview on nothing but lies. And that's a shame. Jennifer, it's not being a hater. It's talking about what is true. And so if you would evaluate what, because I was a Christian for over 40 years. I left Christianity at the age of 46, and I was born into a Christian home, going to Christian church, getting baptized for the remission of my sins, going to church as 3 or 4 times a week. No, I do not believe in God. I believe that we are, it's an amazing thing that we exist, and there are some things that we just don't have the answers to, but we do have the answer to whether or not the God of the Bible is real, and he most definitely is not. There is not a man up in the sky who loves you and who's going to bring you to heaven after you die if you just believe in him. That is an absolute, verifiable, demonstrable lie. The Bible is not true. And I know, for those of you that can't handle the truth and you want to live the fantasy and you want to go around telling everybody else that they're going to be tortured for all eternity if they don't believe what you do, if you have no problem with that, then by all means, go do that. I think it's disgusting and vile. I think it makes you a horrible person to believe something you have no evidence for and to threaten people with torture who don't agree with you. I believe it's disgusting. But for those of you that want to know the truth and want to know how we can determine what is true, then no, this is the same phone as before. If you want to know what is true and how we can know what is true, then I'm the guy you need to be listening to, because I can tell you how we know something's true. So the very simple way for the Bible is just test the claims that the Bible makes. The Bible says whoever believes in Jesus can heal the sick by touching them. This is absolutely false. Take any Christian you want. Benny Hinn, any faith healer, take them to a hospital with people that are confirmed sick and let them pray over them and touch them and see if they get well. They will not. These Benny Hinn and faith healers are con men. And it should be obvious. They're rich. They're mega multi-millionaires, but they never go to a hospital and heal real sick people. They only brainwash you. So the reason they're rich is because they brainwashed you. Preaching is the study of brainwashing. And if you can threaten people and control them with fear, and then you can, once that you got them really convinced that if they don't agree with what you say, then they will be tortured for all eternity, their mind is completely susceptible to believing whatever nonsense you tell them because they are being controlled by fear. This is what preachers are doing. They're threatening you with torture or hellfire just so that they can control and manipulate your thinking. So if anybody's getting ready to go to church today, you're getting ready to pay a man to brainwash you to believe lies. That's what you're doing. Going to church is ruining your life. I did it. It ruined my life. I'm mad because the world is deceived by liars and being brainwashed to believe lies, and then they're telling everybody else that they're going to be sent to hellfire if they don't believe it. Why would you not be mad at that? When there's 2 billion people that believe absolute verifiable lies, and they are going out and telling other people that if they don't believe the same thing, they're going to be thrown in a fire. This should make you mad. Jesus never existed, Rush. Jesus is a fictional character in a fictional story. Jesus is not real. So listen, some of the basic common sense answers to, so first of all, if you would just read the crucifixion and resurrection narratives in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you will see contradictions in all of them. Like Matthew and Mark, the angel tells Mary to go tell the disciples that Jesus will see them in Galilee. Well, they never go to Galilee. They never see Jesus in Matthew and Mark. But Luke changes it. Luke says, no, he's not going to go meet you in Galilee. Jesus told you to stay here in Jerusalem until you're endued with power from on high. And then John's trying to reconcile them both and says, oh yeah, he appeared to him in Jerusalem and Galilee. So John is recognizing the contradiction and trying to say, oh no, yeah, he did appear in Jerusalem, but he appeared to them in Galilee also. But John doesn't say Jesus ever made a public appearance. It says he only appeared before his believers, and they didn't even believe it. So if the people, and they thought he was a ghost, they thought he was of just a vision, of the figment of their imagination. So this is not even a good story to tell about somebody resurrecting from the dead, who only appears to his closest followers, and there's contradictory stories, and that they didn't believe it, and they thought that they were hallucinating or seeing visions, which is an unreliable testimony. So if somebody goes to court today and they're supposed to be testifying to something, and they say, well, I don't know if what I saw was real or not. It could have been a ghost. It could have been a vision. Maybe it was a hallucination, but I saw something. I say, okay, we can't trust anything that you say, because if you're admitting that you don't know if it was real or not, if you were hallucinating, then this is a completely unreliable testimony. And then when you get to 1 Corinthians, this is where 1 Corinthians says, oh, Jesus made a public appearance to 500 people. And this is what Christians most often want to cite, because if it were true, then this would be the best claim that the Bible even makes. But even if Jesus just appeared to 500 people, why did he not appear before the Romans who crucified him, or the Jewish Sanhedrin? Why did nobody write about the resurrection of Jesus except for these people that are Christians that are writing this narrative 100 years after the events, who were not even there to witness it? So when you're writing about supernatural things that you yourself did not witness, And Luke opens up the Gospel of Luke and says, I'm not an eyewitness. I'm just writing down the things that many people have written down before me. So he's like, hey, people have written down stories, and there's some things I like, some things I don't like about what they wrote. So I'm going to change the parts that I don't like, and I'm just going to rewrite it. Oh, most excellent Theophilus, and so he's not even an eyewitness. He's just changing what other people have written before. That's written in your Bible. Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, he says, I am not an eyewitness. I'm just writing down something that others have written before me. And when he writes down contradictory things to the other things that we have evidence for, which is Matthew, Mark, and John, then you know that this is just a story that people are changing to fit their narrative or agenda. So you say, well, what was their agenda? And when you look at history, the Romans and Jews were mortal enemies. They were fighting in multiple wars. In 70 CE, the Romans destroyed the Jewish temple. The Jews revolted all throughout the Roman Empire in what is called the Kitos Rebellion. This was not just in Jerusalem. It was all over the Roman Empire, in Egypt and Turkey and everywhere. There was conflicts between the Romans and the Jews. And then in 130 to 135, you have the Bar Kokhba revolt, where this was the Jewish last stand. So this is just like Star Wars. You got, Our Last Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. Well, Bar Kokhba revolt is Return of the Jedi. It's Return of the Jews. The Jews come back, they mount their final battle, and they lose. And so when they lost in 135, this is when the Roman winners of the war say, we need to change Judaism. This idea that the Jews have that they can overthrow Rome or rebel against Rome and that their God's going to save them, this is obviously causing a lot of trouble in the Roman Empire. So we need to create a narrative to change their view. We need to eradicate this idea of Judaism from the Roman Empire. And so what they did was create Jesus. So no, Jesus wasn't Yoda. Jesus was he was a created, he's a fictional character. Even in their stories, they needed, I guess you had to say, maybe Jesus is Darth Vader, because he's the chosen one. I mean, he's the guy they created to be the central focus of the story, and he's the guy who's going to unalive all the people that don't agree with him. He's the guy that unalives the younglings. And so they create Darth Vader, call him Jesus, and say, you don't understand the power of the dark side. And you will, what does he say when he tells Luke he's going to take him to meet the Emperor? So the Emperor is supposed to be God in heaven. Darth Vader is Jesus. And you all just believe the fictional story. And I did too. So, I was even brainwashed to believe this stuff. Now I know that it's all false. What's up, Accolade?
Hey, Jeff. There's a guy named Russ saying, Jeff, state your claim so that I can break it down to you. He's like, state your claim, and then you kept on talking. And then he's like, so what's your claim? I mean, that's your claim.
You see,
He
the
says
Bible is not. There's my claims right up there. The Bible is
Yeah,
not
he
true.
says
The
he
Roman
could.
spread Christianity.
He
Heaven,
says he
hell,
could
or
rip
fate.
that apart and break it down. So,
Uh,
so Russ is gonna have to request to see this. I want to hear the breakdown.
Jesus only spoke against Judaism. So Jesus came to rebuke the Jews. Jesus said, I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And he called them blind guides of the blind, whitewashed tombs, brood of vipers. And he says, on you and on your head, talking to the Jews, all the righteous blood that has ever been shed is going to fall on your head in this generation. That is a direct reference to the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. When he's talking about, they're going to pay for all the blood that's ever been shed on earth, this is talking about the war. He's not talking about some supernatural divine judgment day in heaven after they die. He's talking about the Romans. In fact, it even mentions it in Luke 21. It says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you know that these are the days that all things written will be fulfilled. So he's talking about, no, I don't believe in sin. Sin is something that humans created to control and manipulate other people with fear of God. When they can get you to be afraid that God's mad at you, then they can manipulate you and brainwash you to believe whatever ridiculous nonsense they want you to believe. And so Christianity is the ridiculous nonsense that they want you to believe, because what it does is it makes you be happy with injustice and poverty and slavery today in the real world, so that you can place all your hopes and dreams in getting some wonderful reward after you die. If they can get you to put all your hopes and dreams in death, and then tell stories about how, oh, look, Jesus died and all his apostles died and they were all brutally, had their heads chopped off and everything, then they are stripping you of the pride of life, and they are replacing that with nothing but hope of dying. They glorify death and say, oh, the best thing that could happen is for you to die. And so this is the kind of message that generals in armies will teach their soldiers, because they say that they're fighting for a good cause and that they're going to die an honorable death. This is what, a Roman Empire, which is going around conquering all the world, and they want their soldiers to, fight to the death.
Are we taught to be non-believers, or are we taught to be believers?
Right. Your parents take you to church and teach you how to believe, right?
Yeah, so the person in the comment that's saying, I feel sorry who taught you, that's directly to the Christians, because Christians are the only people that are taught.
Right. I had to learn that what I was taught was false. So I had to study my way out of Christianity. What's up, Royal? Minded?
Hey, what's going on, Jeff?
Not much.
Hey, man, I recently purchased your book, and man, it's fantastic. You have a lot of insight there, and it makes sense. If we just dare to have any integrity for someone that's seeking truth, we it's clearly visible, and if we just add that with the millions of requests that we make unto a God that is supposed to be omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, we would think that at least the simple things that we pray for should be granted to us. So I thank you for your commitment, your work, man, and I'm gonna be interested in future works that you do. So I just want to say thank you, and I encourage all of the people out there that's live paying attention, man, get this book. I got in particular the Jesus Demigod on Trial. It's a really awesome book.
Yeah. And so listen, I've been really I maybe depressed or disheartened lately, because I believe this book, Jesus Demigod, is an excellent book with excellent information, with a true conclusion that can be demonstrated to be true. And I just don't see that people want the truth, and it's very discouraging. So I'm glad you were able to get the book and read it and see the value of this book. And everybody should get this book and read it. Even people that want to disprove me, if you think I'm wrong, then get the book and then study it, find out how you can prove me wrong, and then either write your own book or let's schedule a debate, because I know that I can't be proven wrong, because I know Christianity better than Christians know Christianity. I was a Christian for over 40 years. I know it. and I know the claims that it makes, and I know that they're all false. And you can prove that they're false and contradictory. So,
Can we compare Jesus to another guy as well? Like, I know Darth Vader was an excellent person to compare it to, but I want to compare Jesus to someone else too, because Jesus has this facade of goodness, but really he's trying to send you to the pits of the damning hell. So it's like, what other person can we compare Jesus to? Maybe Thanos?
well, hang on one second. Let me respond to this question. So keep that thought. Sourdough Sarah says, how do you explain prophecy? There's not a single prophecy. There's not a single legitimate prophecy anywhere in the Bible. The Bible has never predicted the future. Now, if you just look at the Old Testament, so there's a whole bunch of potential prophecies that you can test. So intelligent people should look at these prophecies and say, well, first of all, you have to verify that this was written before any event that it's supposedly predicting. And and I would say that on most occasions you cannot verify. Like if it says, for example, Daniel makes mention that Jeremiah predicted that they would only spend 70 years of captivity in Babylon. But yet Daniel, if you go look at critical scholarship on the dating of Daniel, they'll say Daniel was written in the 2nd century BC. So so that's way after the Babylonian captivity supposedly happened. So it's easy to say, we predicted that we would only be in captivity for 70 years, but yet it was written 300 or 400 years after the event. So this is a scam. If you write something in the future about something that happened in the past, you see, it's easy to write about the past. It's hard to write about the future. And so most of these prophecies were written after the event that they're even talking about. Now, there's a bunch of prophecies in the Old Testament that have never even come true. So it's easy to write a prophecy that's false also. For example, Jeremiah 33, I believe, says that Israel will never lack to have a descendant of David sitting on the throne in Jerusalem, and the Levitical priest will never stop offering sacrifices in the temple forever. That's absolutely false. There is no Davidic king today. There is no Levitical priest offering sacrifices today. So they failed. I believe it's Zechariah 12 or 14 that says that whoever does not come to worship God or Yahweh in Jerusalem at the Feast of Booths every single year, God will not send them rain. So this is a prediction that has never come true, that the whole world, every nation of the world is going to go to Jerusalem one time a year and worship at the Feast of Booths, and whoever does not go will not get any rain. So it's easy to write a false prophecy. They're all throughout the Bible. It's easy to write about things that happened in the past. And here's another scam that prophecy is. It's easy to take something that was written before and then create a narrative that they associate with that. And this is primarily what the New Testament does. The New Testament has simply gone back into the Old Testament and looked for things that they can associate. For example, I believe it's Psalm 22 that says they cast lot, my God, why have you forsaken me? They have cast lots for my garments. Mm-hmm. And so when they wrote the New Testament, they said, let's say that Jesus said, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then we'll make the guards cast lots for his garments. And then we can say that this is a prophecy fulfilled. What they did is they wrote a fictional story and they associated it with something that was not even a prophecy. Psalm 22 is not a prophecy. It's not predicting the future. It's not about a Messiah dying on the cross. It is just a song of lament that David or the Israelites would sing whenever things were not going well. And so what they did, and the same is true for Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 is not a prophecy. It's not a prediction of the future. It's talking in the past tense. It's saying, he laid on us the iniquity of us all, and by his stripes we were healed. And it says nothing about a Messiah. It says nothing about a Christ. It says nothing about Jesus. the context is all about Israel suffering in Babylonian captivity. So when it's talking about Israel suffering and it's saying now God has redeemed us and by their stripes we are healed, it's obviously talking about Israel. But what the New Testament did is they went back and they found things that talked about the suffering of Israel, and then they created a fictional Messiah that you call Jesus, and then they made him a suffering Messiah. So it is not a prophecy about Jesus. There is no prophecies about Jesus ever anywhere. Every single time, on all occasions, 100% of the time, they just found a scripture in the Old Testament and then wrote a fictional story. Here's another example. Mark, Luke, and John, and Paul, and nowhere in the New Testament does it ever say that Jesus went to Egypt, except in Matthew. Matthew quoted Hosea 11:1, says, I called my son out of Egypt. And so Matthew associates this verse and says this is a prophecy that had to be fulfilled about Jesus, that he was going to call his son out of Egypt. But if you just read Hosea 11:1 in the entirety of the verse, instead of just the part they want you to read, it says, when Israel was a child, I loved him and I called my son out of Egypt. So it's talking about Israel being the son of God. In fact, Israel is the son of God all throughout the Old Testament. Israel, not Jesus. There is a brand new son of God in the New Testament, and the New Testament was written in Greek. The Romans wrote and spoke in Greek. The Jews wrote and spoke in Hebrew. So there was a different group of people that wrote the New Testament in a different language after those Romans destroyed the Jews in war. So this is just basic common sense. 1 + 1 is 2. When you get a religion that changes the narrative of a Greek religion changes the narrative of a Hebrew religion at the exact same time that Greek-speaking people destroyed Hebrew-speaking people in war, then it's blatantly obvious that the people who won the war wrote a religion to replace the losers of the war's religion. It's obvious.
Fictional story of the Bible that all Christians hold on to as fact is the myth that the scriptures were passed down and translated, from Hebrew to Greek, right? In reality, the earliest manuscripts are Greek, and then for the longest, the Mezerites wanted a copy of their own. So they converted and translated from Greek to Hebrew, in actual reality. So it's like, that's the real truth. The Hebrew to Greek is the fake truth. And this captivity that we talk about, I like how you said that, Jeff, but at the end of it all, it's a fake Babylonian captivity. 100% fictional Babylonian characters. This is North Syria and South Syria, Upper Syria and Lower Syria. The Assyrians and the Babylonians are the same people in actual reality. Just like Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt. That's it. They're all Egyptians. So they're all Syrians. But in the Bible, they call Lower Assyria Babylon. Like it's a different people to create some type of narrative to give a different source.
I view it like this. It's essentially Iran versus Iraq. So
basically.
I call Iran Persia and Iraq Babylon. It's Iran versus
you're making up a something like some shit, and it's the same people, and you're making up so to give a depth to the story. Yeah, it's basically exactly what it is. We're talking about the same people here, but they want to give depth to it so it could have like some type of biblical prophecy or something.
Hey, Royal, do you have anything else you want to say?
I can't put enough emphasis on just getting people to in my neighborhood and stuff. I'm gonna be passing the word along. I mean, if we care about this life and the quality thereof, we gotta have some sense of integrity and accountability, to see what we can manifest in whatever we can in our own knowledge and application of wisdom. So like I said, my hat goes off to you, Jeff. Keep the work up. I'll do what I can to support you, man, and I'll be visiting you from time to time, man.
That's awesome. So, Royal, you reminded me of something I've been thinking about a good bit lately. You said you're looking forward to what I do next, and I don't know. I've had some plans about changing the world and then getting discouraged and losing hope. But what I've been thinking about recently is this age of Aquarius thing, and you actually reminded me of it. You saying we need to have some integrity. We need to apply a reliable sense of scholarship to history and to the Bible to verify if the things that we believe are true. And I believe that's associated with this idea that we call the age of Aquarius. The
Mm-hmm.
age of Aquarius is about intellectual thinking. It's about changing our paradigms to from being mystical to being intelligent, intellectual. And one of the things that I think would be so crucial, it would be simple on the one hand, but it would be crucial on the other, is if we just changed our calendar. When we say, March 13th, we have no idea what day of the week that is or how far away it is or anything like that. But I believe we ought to just change our calendar, and our calendar should reflect nature. We obviously have our calendar. It's all screwed up that says October is supposed to be, Oct means 8, but yet it's
Right.
the 10th month.
Mm-hmm.
November should be 9, but it's the 11th, and December should be 10, Deca, but yet it's the 12th. And so we have 13 constellations that actually make up our zodiac. When we look at constellations in the sky, we have 13. And we have 13 full moons every year. 13,
That's
not
true.
12. And the moon is the greatest natural
Right. The moon
reflection
is
of,
effect.
of a monthly cycle. The moon goes through its phases from a new moon to full moon and back to new moon in 28 days. It's 28 days. So
Yeah.
our months should be correlated to our nature, things that we can observe and say. And so instead of having our calendar that's all screwed up, we should make our calendar fit what we observe in nature. 28-day months based on the moon's monthly cycle. We would have 13 months based on the 13 constellations that we have instead of 12. And we definitely need to change how we associate our years because, right now, the fact that we call ourselves in 2025, this is associated with Jesus.
Yes.
And even though they even miscalculated that, because when you say when was Jesus born, it'll say he had to be born before 4 to 6 BC because Matthew says Herod the Great was still alive when Jesus was born. So they miscalculated. They messed up. So when we know that they messed up the calendar, even if you're associated with Jesus, it's still messed up. We should try to fix it, like fix our calendar. And since we're associating our calendar with, a year is how long it takes the Earth to travel around the sun, so that we get summer, winter, spring, and fall at the same time of year every year. We have 365 days in a year, and so we need to create a calendar that is accurately reflects our nature. And I believe that it would have a profound effect on a lot of things, because when you base your things on reality and observable reality instead of fictional fantasies, then it'll change your minds. Like, you know what, I want to base my reality on observation instead of fantasy. Then it would totally change. And I believe this would be one of the things that would change the mindset of people from believing in fantasies to believing in observable reality. So, but I was trying to figure out how we would, if we got rid of or calculated our years based off something other than the flawed system of Anno Domini. I say, well, since we're looking at the stars, I just did a Google search. I said, when was the zodiac was created? And it said about 400 BC. So the Greeks created our zodiac in about 400 BC. And so if you just tacked on 400 years to where we are now and going back to the Greek, Alexander the Great or whatever, which seems to have the greatest influence. Even the Roman Empire was influenced by the Greek Empire. And the Greeks, they had a huge impact on, they conquered the world and had a huge impact. So I said, well, maybe we'll just date it back 400 years. So right now we would be in the year 2425. or maybe 2424, something like that. And we would just be dating back to the origin of the zodiac and the Greek Empire. And but since that's a little more nebulous, I would like to come up with a system of calculating our years that's based on something that's more observable, instead of just arbitrarily picking the Greek Empire. So I don't know how we do the years, but we definitely need to change that. But I want to change the calendar, and uh, so we can.
I have a question. Do you have like a team or a group of scientists that actually um, supports that point of view on that? Because that would help. Because really, with doing that, with dealing with the Greco-Roman intelligentsia calendric order, that's also about politics. And you're going to be battling a lot of things legislatively because a lot of this ignorance is based upon the feeble mind as far as keep people's money invested in to keeping people dumb. And so that's why they perpetuate ignorance instead of enlightenment.
Right.
So I believe
Definitely.
that all these things have to be taken in consideration because it's really even though this was said by a Christian minister, I don't share her faith, but I do believe what she said. She said it's a battlefield of the mind. And
Yeah.
because that's what's going on. Because even like in this particular country, you look at some of the things that has happened over the past 4 to 5 years. We're regressing, and to be at this day and age to be the greatest time, and even in the time of Aquarius, meaning pouring out of information, we're still believing in myths that has not helped us in the current present time. And I'm not the most poetic of speakers because I really insult people by my boldness, but rather than bringing a lot of science to it and stuff, I go straight for the gut with a blade, and I'll say things such as, well, what about if the world is full of sin, right? And you have this consciousness that the world is full of sin and you have integrity and accountability, why don't you, as an individual, you be holy and you possess the power to go into a hospital and lay hands on a 7 or 8 year old that's dying of cancer? If you have this consciousness of the value of sustaining life, why don't you perform these miracles that you believe is so evident, that you believe that is so obtainable? Why we still have so much death and destruction? Why do we still have so much despair? Why is it that your main objective is to promote dogma over data? None of those things, what I could hardly say that is the attribute of love. And furthermore, if you believe in the triune state, if you believe in a Father and a Son and a Holy Ghost, then how can you be infused with part of the Trinity that is a divine order and you're not infused with information to help at least manifest the things that you desire for the best? Even if God didn't want to be associated with any of us, give us the information that we need to actually fix our own shit, you know.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yet you would rather be heard preaching. You'd rather appeal to someone's emotionalism or their ego. And I'll give you this gift. One thing that I like to say is that it's just like slavery. And with being an African American, I don't like anything tied to slavery, much less a religious doctrine that actually condones slavery. But to condone someone's emotions, ignorance, and ego, you might as well be in chains because you can't have any peace in life like that. You don't even have the freedom to evolve so you can alter the quality of your state.
yeah.
So I say things like that. I know it could be offensive, but if you can prove to me that it's not true, I'll hear you.
Yeah.
So anything that I can do to be supportive, I'm all for it. Like I said, I love the book. If I had one question on it, I know that you had mentioned another book that you did previous, but by me getting the latest edition, I was just wondering if Should I get the first one that you did too?
Well,
Or
so the first book I wrote called "It Is Finished" is when I still believed that the Bible was true, and I was explaining the Bible as if the Bible was reliable.
okay.
Uh, and so that would be a quick. So it sounds like you're already advanced past that book. So if you're willing to accept that the Bible's not true and you're reading Jesus Demigod, I say, I think the first book is good, but it's good for people that are deconstructing from Christianity but are
Okay.
still Christian, because I was still Christian when I wrote that. So it's about preterism. It's about how the Bible says that Jesus was going to return in the lifetime of his apostles when the temple was destroyed, that they were going to see these signs, that they would need to flee Judea to the mountains. And so, if you're prepared and ready to read Jesus Demigod, I'd say it's going backwards to read It Is Finished, because
Okay.
that was my progress. So, but if I ever get motivated to write another book, it would be about how the world needs to change going forward.
Yeah.
How we need to how we can recognize that Christianity is false, and how we should change the world based on reality and observation and intellectual thinking, rather than believing in myths and fantasies. And I would like to do that, but my ideas are kind of all over the board, and I need to settle in my mind, how we would go forward so that I could document it in a way that would be satisfying me. Some things like changing the calendars, and when you talk about slavery, I feel like I'm a slave. Now, I'm not the kind of slave that African Americans were, 200 years ago or however long it was. I'm not that kind of slave, but I am a slave because I'm very limited on what I can do in this life. Uh, I have to work 5 days a week, and I just pay my bills and go to work and pay my bills and come home and do the same thing every single week. Now, I'm not getting beaten, and I have some freedom, but I believe we need to change the world so that we can actually enjoy our lives. That each person, instead of, so I think that people that are rich and powerful are our number one enemies. I would associate them with the slave owners. They're rich
Yeah.
and powerful, and they are the slave owners, and they're the ones that have the influence. They're the ones that control the world. And all of us who are just trying to survive and live our lives, we're all slaves. And we can't change anything, and we just have to do whatever we can to survive. And I believe we need to prevent people from getting rich and powerful, and that we need to have a life experience where humanity is all working toward the betterment of humanity.
Hey
Where
Jeff,
each,
do you got a pencil or a pen or something you can write down real quick?
yeah,
All right, I'm gonna sew something into you, and I believe in what you're saying, and I believe that everything in the universe is energy and principle, and the principles that we apply is indicative of the results that we manifest. So what I want you to write down is today's date, and in accordance in combo with what you're saying, what I want you to write down, since you're talking about calendar and order and stuff like that, I want you to write down 24 hours in a day. And this could be maybe insert or maybe a chapter, just whatever you feel that wisdom is leading you. But break it down in layman's terms in the sense of it's 24 hours in a day. And you're putting this together with being a slave. It's 24 hours in a day. Medically, you're recommended to sleep 8 hours in a day. On a regular 40-hour week job, you're going to be working 8 hours in a day. So, whatever else you have to do in this life or believe that you're capable of accomplishing in this life, whether that's a husband or a wife or whatever it is, you only got 8 hours to fuck with.
yeah,
You know, that's not a lot of time, but it is a lot of time for other people to dictate what you're going to do with your little bit of time. which is basically your life, because life expectancy is not that long if you really think about it.
Mhm.
So I agree with what you're saying, and that's just a gift of thought that I like to hear you elaborate on. It's only 24 hours in a day. Stuff like that is not debatable, you know? And ever how you want to count with the earth rotating on an axis, you're going to see that sunlight usually transitions on a regular basis. What are you going to do in that period before you can no longer view the sun ever again? So I'm with you on that, man. And so I'm going to subscribe, and I do a lot of different things too, and whatever I can do to help, man. This what it's about, because if people actually, if it was any good to the whole ideology of Christos, it would be the consciousness of care for humanity. Or else you don't even have a clue of knowing or seeing or having any idea of what a God is. Because if it is a God, it's definitely inside of you. So, man, I'm grateful that you allow me to come on and talk and keep doing the work. I know it seems like it's falling on deaf ears, and it
Well,
is what
see,
it is.
so I know that there's a lot of people that have told me that they appreciate what I've done to help them change or see the truth or whatever. Uh, but it's the negativity that makes me want to quit.
It's horrible.
But I know there's a lot of people that are learning and growing, but it's just the negativity uh, is hard.
It is, man. It helps. But you lean on the love and the appreciation of the community that see you, man.
Yeah.
Um, it's like that everywhere, and it just depends on how we see it. Because think about some people that appreciate diamonds, right? And you got some people that like zirconia, cubic zirconias, and they don't damn know the difference, you know. And it just is what it is. You have to congregate with them with saying like mindedness, and then we have support one another, man, and keep it moving. And
Well,
you know,
so I believe wholeheartedly that at some time in our future, and it could be really soon, or it could be shortly after I die, or something, that there is going to be an awakening, and people are going to realize the Bible is not true or trustworthy, and that we're going to do the things that I think need to be done. But what's disappointing is I'm probably going to be dead when that happens.
ain't that how it usually is historically?
Right? Yeah.
You know. So, but the truth of the matter is, the awakening has already happened. You couldn't have gotten and done the work that you've done without that awakening. So
Right.
you're a part of it, Jeff. So thank you. And man, just keep doing what you're doing, and somebody will hear it, and continue to spread. And same way poison is spread, the same way as healing is
Yes.
spread.
I
One
appreciate
experience
it.
at a time.
Thanks for stopping in, Royal.
All right, man. Thanks again. All right.
Catch
Bye
you
bye.
later.
I'm God. Let me go answer that cancer question for everyone in this live. Do not ask for me to get rid of cancer, because I cannot do that. But if you commit the sin and wish that someone else had cancer and ask for forgiveness, that I can do.
I don't understand what you just said.
I can't get rid of cancer, even though I created it. But if you
From God's
commit the
perspective, right?
sin
Yeah, he's
to wish
pretending like
someone
he's
else to have
God.
cancer
Okay.
and ask for forgiveness, that I could do.
Right. So something that doesn't require any evidence or proof, God can do that all day. But if
Exactly.
like
That's what I can do, because I'm God.
that's like saying, Benny Hinn can heal people of a headache, but he can't heal an amputee, because we can see if the person didn't have a leg and now he has a leg, but you can't see if somebody had a headache and now they said they don't. So
Right.
that's the only kind of evidence or proof that they can provide, is things that actually have no observable. So hey, you forgiven? I've been forgiven of my sins. Oh well, hallelujah. What's your evidence of that? Well, I just believe it. Oh well, then congratulations. You're no different than you were before, but you believe that God's not mad at you anymore. So hallelujah.
Well,
So there,
there's
go
a guy in
ahead.
the chat that says he saw a Bible turning all by itself.
Yeah. Uh, so are you wearing a neck brace, Patrina?
I've got it off this morning sitting here in the chair because I'm having a hard time keeping it on 24/7. It's driving
Just,
me crazy.
just don't do this, I guess, right? So
Yeah, I'm not supposed to turn my neck, twist it, or bend it.
yeah. All right. Well, I tried to let somebody in, but they didn't make it. Wait, there it is right there at the top. So I'm trying to let Odell in. He said he had a question, so maybe get right to the point.
Hello?
What's up, Odell?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good.
Okay, I'm the one who wrote the telling the woman that I show a Bible turning for itself. What happens is this: it was in a compound where it has more than 20 people in there, and there was a jar that was broken, and they were asking who did it. Nobody was coming out like to confess he or she is the one who did it for himself, right? And they brought a Bible. They put a key in the middle of the Bible. I don't know in which page, right? And they tied it. One put his finger on the other side, and the other person put the finger on the other side. And there was a reading that they were reading, and they were calling the people's name, the people who were living in that compound. They called like up to 10. The 11 ones, then the Bible started turning. This is not from a movie or documentary or something like that, or something that I pick up in TikTok, right? And my question is this: if the Bible is not real, if I thought there's no force in it, I'm not a Christian and I'm not a Muslim, but it's something that I witnessed. What was turning this Bible?
So I don't know, how what you're talking, the situation you're talking about, but Bibles don't turn by themselves. And so,
So how was this Bible turning?
okay, so are you in Africa or America? Where are you?
No, right now I'm in Europe, but this thing happens in Africa.
Okay, so listen. Do you want to be a gullible person that believes scams, or do you want to be an intelligent person that knows that people lie and trick people?
Okay, I believe
No,
that
answer that question. Do
no,
you want to be
I
a
want to
gullible
be
person who believes scams, or an
no,
intelligent person
I
that
don't want
knows
to
who
believe
believes scams?
scams. I don't want to believe scams. But if I
Right.
told you something that I've been told, I'll have doubt. But this is something that I have witnessed.
Okay,
I
so
saw it with my eyes.
listen, Odell, listen.
They were not doing this for money.
Odell, if you want to be smart, you have to listen.
Okay.
So you know that there are a lot of people that perform magic tricks, and that there's a sleight of hand, and I see people do. So I've seen a guy named Chris Angel walk on water, which I mean, while
Yeah.
people are in there, but he probably had a clear plastic platform he could walk on.
Bro,
But
that's a show.
yes, and the Bible turning was also a show.
Yes.
Are you sure?
So, Odell,
100%,
No,
absolutely.
if I told
Odell,
you, hello,
Odell.
yes, yeah.
So God has the power to turn the page of a Bible, but he
No,
doesn't have
no,
power
it wasn't.
to.
It
But he
wasn't.
doesn't have power to grow a leg or an arm, right? Is that what you're saying?
Look, that wasn't a page. It was a whole Bible. It was tight. They put a
Oh,
robe on the
okay.
middle of the Bible.
So a whole Bible. He has the power to do that,
So
but
are you
not
saying
something that
the Bible
would
was
benefit
turned
human
like
Okay,
minds.
something like that. Okay, in the middle there, yeah, Tony, right here. Okay, they put how they call it, key. There's a one type of key, a long key, and they tight it. They tight it. Yeah, like okay, they fix it there. Yeah. Okay, turn the pen. Turn the pen, please. No, not like that. Not like that. Not like that. Turn the pen. No, turn the pen to the middle. No, this other side of the. Yeah. Okay, like that. Okay. Let the one side of the pen come out of the book. No. Okay, like that. Okay, like that. Okay, close the Bible now. Thank you. They tight it, and this side of the pen is having a gap, and the other side is having, and it's where they put their fingers. Okay, and the Bible. Now turn the Bible. Turn it like no, like the down. Okay, thank you. Come down. Come down a little bit. Thank you, brother. That's how they tight it. And the other side of the pen, there's one gap of the key. Those key. The key was having like two sides like that. And one person was putting his hand, sorry, his finger at this other side, and the other person did the same. No, go up. No, no, no. Go up to no. Go to the pen directly. Go to the pen. No, let the pen. No, straighten. Okay, like that. Okay. Now. Okay. No, close the Bible. Close the Bible with one hand.
Uh,
Okay. This no. Okay. Laugh. Don't worry. At the other side there, they handle it. Now the one guy was reading and the Bible was turning. Immediately they go to the person's name who broke the jar. The Bible. That's what the Bible was turning. Thank you.
So the Bible was standing up all by itself, or there were
Yes.
people holding it?
People hold, yeah, they hold where the pen is. They don't
Okay.
take the
So
Bible.
now listen, Odell. What you're saying is one person had his hand over here, one person had his
No,
hand over
no, no,
here,
no, no,
and the Bible
no,
was turning. And you think the Bible was turning their hands? Their
no.
hands were turning the Bible.
They don't hold the Bible with their hand. Their finger was only on the pen.
So how does
No,
the Bible? So listen, Odell. How does the Bible sit up like this if nobody's holding it? You're saying the Bible was floating in midair?
look, go to the pen and put your finger on top on the side of the pen, side of the pen. No, no, no. Lay your finger like no,
just on the
okay,
pin
okay. Now
itself. Yeah.
turn your palm upside down. Now, no, like your palm will be facing up. Thank you, like that. The finger, okay, and the other finger was in this other side of two people, and the Bible was like on air, like down. You understand? Now it was turning. It was turning. This was
So
not for
Odell,
money. It was
Odell,
not
listen,
show.
Miracle. Oh my
Odell,
God,
Yes.
a miracle.
Odell, please.
Mhm.
So I'm holding this. I've got I'm holding it here. If I let it go, it falls. Are you telling me that the Bible was floating in midair and nobody was holding it up?
But I explained to you where the pen is. There was a key, and on the handle of the key is where they put their hand. You
Was the
understand?
Bible on a table? Was the Bible on a table?
No, no,
Was it laying flat like this?
no, 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 no. The first,
So
the
you're
first time,
saying it was standing up
yeah, it was
like
standing like
this
that.
and nobody was holding it?
No, it was standing like that. It was tight. The pen was. You see how you put the pen.
Odell, listen, Odell. You
Scam.
were duped. You believed something was magical, but it was not magical. You are a weak-minded, gullible person that believes in
Yes.
supernatural things, even though somebody. So I still don't understand. But it sounds like you're saying that the book was standing up all by itself. Books don't
No,
stand up on their edge. Now, if it's a hardback, but if you raise the pages, it's going to fall open. So books cannot, will not, under any circumstances, stand up. This book will absolutely not stand up by itself. You see how it
no,
folds
but
down, it opens up.
I have explained to you clearly. You see how you put the pen inside your Bible there. They tight it. They tight it, and where the pen is, where the key was, and on top of the pen there was the handle of the
You were
key.
scammed.
The
You were
handle of the
scammed.
key, the handle of the key is where they put their fingers. So their fingers were supporting the Bible not to fall. You understand?
Okay, so one person was pushing this way, one person pushing this way.
Thank you,
They
thank
were
you.
holding the Bible up with their fingers.
Yeah, yes. You see how you put your hands? That's how they hold the key. Okay, the key was in the middle of your fingers like that. You understand? That's how they support the Bible. And immediately they started reading. They call that individual name. The Bible was turning.
And so it was sitting up like this, and the Bible started
Yes,
turning like this.
yes, like that.
But the
So,
base of it,
so
the base of it was sitting on a table,
no,
so it was floating in midair.
you know,
The
if the
book
key
was
was
floating.
the key was yes, the key was in the middle of the Bible. They tied it.
he's not understanding. He's been scammed and he just doesn't want to admit it.
Man,
Odell, if
I hope
listen,
look,
Odell,
I can.
if you want to be smart, you
Yes.
cannot believe in ridiculous nonsense like that.
I hope we're in a different. Sorry, I hope I was like close to you right now. I'll show you how.
So Odell, you demonstrated that you just believe ridiculous nonsense, that you're gullible and
So,
weak-minded, and
so
you
does he
can't
think
even.
does he think God did this or the people had magical powers did this?
I
Because
think he's saying that the Bible is a magical book and that it is tied to the supernatural God man in the sky, and God wanted to demonstrate that He could turn a Bible.
right.
why don't he demonstrate that he can heal sickness?
Heal somebody, right?
Yeah, do something good instead of a
Yeah.
magic trick.
Something that can help humankind. I mean, turning a Bible isn't going to do anything for nobody.
All right, I'm letting Tina in. Link Tina up. Success Christ, are you in the box? You're not requesting. I see Russian, Young Millie, and Orville Redenbacher. Look, Orville Redenbacher's back. Tina's not connecting. Orville Francis. Tina, you're probably gonna have to request again, and we're not connecting. I'll let you up if I see you again. I'm gonna let Orville Redenbacher up. Maybe nobody's connecting. They've been waiting too long or something. There we go. What's up, Orville?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Good day to your program. I was just listening to you. But what the man is saying about the Bible and the key is true.
Okay.
He can confirm, but you don't understand what he is saying to you. It means that he holds the key at one side and the Bible in the other side. Two sides hold it. And when they cut, they put a finger on the key at this side, and on the next side of the Bible, they put their finger just in midair like that. And when they speak, and it falls on the name of the person that do the act, it spins.
So,
but you don't understand what he was telling you.
Orville, when people are touching a Bible and the Bible spins, it's because the people are turning the book.
No, he was not telling you that people was turning the book.
So, Orville,
does not all.
Orville, listen.
Yeah.
I am not interested in hearing a story about a book turning. If you want to do something that demonstrates the existence of God, then go heal the sick. Okay? I don't care if your God can turn a book. I don't care. It means absolutely nothing to me or anybody that cares about anything that matters. If your God only has the power to turn a book, then he is a worthless God. So go heal the sick. Go feed the hungry. Do something useful. If you believe that your God can turn a book, then I don't care about your God. If the best trick he has is to turn a book,
that's right.
Then go tell
that's
somebody
not all
else
the thing
about
he can do.
Useless God.
That's not the only thing he can do. He can do lots of things, but first you have to know him first. If you don't know him, you cannot talk about him.
Do you know your God?
Of course.
Okay, can you demonstrate the power of your God right now in any way? Demonstrate that your God exists and that he has power.
All right, I want to tell you how when I am sick, he heals me. Just like what you said.
Okay, listen, when I'm sick, I pray to a frog queen, and the frog queen heals me.
Why do you even get sick, Orville? Why do you even get sick? If you're his child, you shouldn't even get sick, right? Because you get sick just like atheists get sick.
Yeah, and you get well just like atheists get well. You go to a doctor, you take medicine, or you do whatever it requires for you to rest and heal. Your God does not ever magically heal you for anything. You get healed the exact same way that everybody on earth gets healed, and that's through medicine or rest or whatever process that is needed.
No, you have miracle healing. You have miracle healing. You have miracle healing.
No, we don't.
No.
Okay.
You shouldn't even get sick.
Or
yes, but the body.
What country do you live in?
I'm living in Jamaica.
Jamaica. So, are there any hospitals in Jamaica?
Yes.
So, are there sick people in the hospitals in Jamaica?
Yes, I've been there.
So,
I've been there to do the work.
Have you healed the people in the hospitals in Jamaica?
Exactly.
You have.
I remember.
So, is there a news article anywhere that I can go to read about somebody going to heal people in the hospitals in Jamaica?
Okay. Yes, a lot of people go and do that. But I'm going to give you one example. I remember I went to the hospital. I was riding a bicycle, and the bicycle, my finger went into the chain of the bicycle. And I went to the hospital at that time just to get it dressed. While I was there, I was minister the word of God to the sick people on their beds. Right? And all of a sudden, I feel like I was blacking out because I left from where the doctor put me and going to the wards, ministering to them. And when I was coming downstairs, I fell from upstairs to downstairs and I didn't drop on the ground. The angel of the Lord catch me. I may telling you the thing now, but it sounds
You're
impossible to
walking down
you.
the stairs in the hospital and you fell down the stairs and God called
And I
you.
fell down and I don't drop on the ground. You may laugh at me, but I'm telling you the truth.
No, you're not, Orville. You're an absolute
Okay.
liar.
All right.
And
I
I
speak the
don't
word,
entertain liars.
but sometimes in this
All right, who's next?
You need to wake up from the delusion.
Hey,
Yes. Yes, how are you doing?
good.
Yes. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Ah, thank God. So, why do you say Jesus never existed? Why?
So, I mean, I wrote a whole book about it, but when you go study the history and the evidence around Jesus, the evidence for Jesus is abysmal. It is horrible. Not a single person wrote about Jesus during his lifetime. Not one. The Bible was not written during Jesus' lifetime. The New Testament, not a single thing. When you look at the history of the Bible, not a single book of the Bible appears in history in the first century at all. Their only evidence, the earliest evidence of any New Testament book, comes from a reference to Marcion's gospel, that he found a gospel of the Lord and some letters from Paul. But we don't have any physical evidence of this. All we have is other people that are writing about Marcion's gospel. And so the physical evidence for anything in the Bible is mid to late second century. And when you read what the Bible says, like Luke chapter 1, first 3 verses, says, I am writing things that many people have written before me and were handed down to us by those who were eyewitnesses. So just because a book says there were eyewitnesses does not mean there were eyewitnesses. It is a claim. You got to understand that is a claim. It is not true. You have to prove a claim to be true. And so all the stories that are written in the Gospels are written in the third person narrative. None of them are written from a first person's perspective. No story anywhere in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John is written from an eyewitness's perspective. When it talks about the birth of Jesus, it is a story that someone else told. It is not a first-hand eyewitness testimony to the birth of Jesus. When you read about the crucifixion of Jesus, it is written in the third person narrative. It is a story that someone is telling about what other people claim to have happened. And there are contradictions in the story. So the Bible is absolutely not an eyewitness testimony. It didn't even exist until the second century. Nobody wrote about Jesus at all, in any way, any shape or form, during the lifetime, even during the first century. The entire first century, nobody wrote about Jesus. Nobody. So when you get a supernatural story about a supernatural character that was written by people who were not even alive to testify to these things, this is overwhelming evidence that it is a fictional story. It is not a true story. If Jesus was a real person, then somebody should have written about him during his lifetime, and nobody did.
All right.
Success.
Then,
I was muting you while he was talking because you were having some background noise. Please remain muted until he's done talking.
All
No,
right.
no, go ahead. Respond to that.
Are you ready? So, you want to tell us that you don't believe in God? Sorry. Let me move away here, man.
Yes, you have some noise.
Somebody's
Yes. You
camera
want to tell
really
us that
went
you
low.
don't believe in God?
Correct. I do not believe in God.
Okay, so
Just like
if
I
you
don't
don't
believe in
believe in
fairies
God,
and trolls and ghosts either.
if you don't believe in God, it is going to be a problem because people who are not believing in God, they are very dangerous. They can do anything to the society.
Success. You need to move
Okay.
somewhere else. You have too much background noise.
And so
Right?
listen, Success. I believe the people that are threatening eternal torture to whoever doesn't believe in God are a danger to society. I'm not doing anything to endanger anybody. In fact, I'm a humanitarian. I believe that we should do things for the betterment of humanity. And I believe telling them that they have to believe that God sacrificed his son under threat of eternal torture is evil. So I think you're the danger to society. You're the one that's telling other people that if
Yes.
they don't believe in something with no evidence, then they get tortured. And you want to pretend like that's good? It's not good to threaten people who don't believe in something when there's no evidence for that something. In fact, all the evidence is that the Bible is false and unreliable. The Bible says whoever believes in Jesus can heal the sick. That is absolutely false. And so, Success Christ, you're not coming back up because you're delusional and you have too much background noise.
The ones who are dangerous are the ones that believe in a religion. That's the ones who's dangerous.
Yeah, they're even going to war. I mean, the people that believe in these gods they're actively engaged in war all the time. And if you look at the Bible from front to back, from Genesis to Revelation, it's all about war. I mean,
So,
God is a God of war all throughout the Bible. That's all he's
and
about.
and Jehovah's Witnesses are allowing their children and family members to pass away in a hospital just because they refuse to take a blood transfusion. It's ridiculous nonsense.
Yeah, that is a danger to children. When children are unfortunately born to religious parents that have religious ideologies, they are endangered. I mean, children that are born in Amish communities are endangered. Children that are born in any in religious society are being endangered by their parents. What's up, Russian?
Yeah, man. Yeah, you all have a solid point.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, and I believe that from, like from a young tender age, certain teachings that are teach from, you're young and coming up, it's like it's all a brainwash. You believe it so much until you actually think it's true.
Right. So, I mean, I was brainwashed. I was raised in a Christian family. Now, I believe my parents loved me, my grandparents loved me, and they wanted to do what was right, but they were brainwashed.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that this God of the Bible exists, and there's tons of evidence that he does not exist. But people are just believing because they're scared. That's all. Because they're scared.
Yeah, they're fearful.
We are so scared and fearful that we believe that Jeff doesn't even experience love within his family. We believe as Christians that Jeff's love is an illusion because there is no true love without God. If you don't have God, you do not know love. So when Jeff describes love, it's an illusion that he's describing.
But
This is
yet,
the
but yet,
definition for Christians.
So the Bible in 1 Corinthians 13 says love keeps no record of wrongs, love believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. But yet God does not do that. God keeps a record of wrong, and he
That's
doesn't
correct.
believe in you. He loses faith in you, and he threatens you with torture. You see, but this is what's amazing to me is people who believe in the Bible, they think God is love, but yet they're telling everybody else that if they don't believe the right thing, they're going to be tortured for all eternity. I say, how is that love? It's like, that was just you choosing not to love God. I thought God was unconditional love. He doesn't keep a record of wrongs. And so if you don't believe in him, God doesn't even keep a record of you not believing in him. So why would he punish you if he's not keeping a record of wrongs? You see, so what they really want is they want you to show unconditional love to God, as if God needs love. Like God is not almighty and all powerful and self-sufficient. God needs us to love him because he gets really, really mad if we don't love him the right way.
Wait a minute. Are you claiming that God is insecure?
That's what God has. Yeah, God is insecure. And he's egotistical. He's a maniacal maniac who demands that you love him, even though he does not. He lets children get kidnapped and raped and abused and buried in shallow graves in the woods, and yet you're supposed to love God. Oh, God took away my children. God took away my mom. God gave me breast cancer or whatever. Oh, praise God for giving me breast cancer.
Yes,
This is
I get
ridiculous.
breast cancer because I know what's good for you.
For
I
the
know
first
that I would
time,
never give someone more than they cannot handle.
yeah, for the first time ever, I had people want to pray for me Friday after my accident, and I actually refused it. And I'm better without prayer.
Well, I know that when people want to pray, they have good intentions. It's essentially because when I sent you that message saying I hope you get better, best wishes, and you stretch all this stuff out. But when people say I'll pray for you, secretly what they're saying is I hope you get better. I'm sorry that you're having to go through these hard times or pain or whatever. And so it's good intentions, but they don't realize what they're saying. The people, I mean, some people get better when they get hurt or sick, and some people don't. Some people die. And so when you say, oh, I'm going to pray for you, like the little
Yeah,
16-year-old
even
girl
the
that I
ones
talk
that
about all
are
the time.
prayed for, they pass away. So
Right. And so
no
so
different.
if somebody dies, they just say, "Oh, God called her home." So this is a scam. When you say no matter what happens, God's not going to he's not a genie. He don't just give you whatever you ask for. You can't rub the lamp and get whatever you want. You just pray, and then if you live, then God made you live, and if you die, then God
And
made
they
you
prove
die.
that they're right. And then if you pass away, they go, he took you home. So why, yeah. So hold on.
Right.
Are you saying
And
that prayer is kind of insulting to the other party?
Yeah,
it's a scam.
it's worthless.
Yeah, it's worthless.
Hold
It's a
on.
scam.
So
God's going to do
if I
whatever he wants to do no matter what, even if you believe in him. And Christians will argue with me and say that, oh, you can't, he's not a genie. You can't, when you quote the Bible that says, John chapter 15, verse 7, that says, if my words abide in you and you abide in me, then you can ask for anything you desire and it will be given to you. And when you quote this verse, it says, if you just let Jesus live in you, then you can ask whatever you desire and it will be given. And you can say, well, give me a car. And he's like, oh, no, that you can't ask for a car. I say, well, then heal my mama. My mom is sick. And they say, well, that might not be God's will. And he's like, well, then what's the point of prayer? So if you can't get whatever you want, like it says, you can't even get something that, if it was, say,
Exactly.
God, I pray that to end world hunger and homelessness. And that's not selfish at all. That's just looking only for the good of other people. And then you say, well, why did God not end hunger and homelessness like we prayed for? So, well, it just wasn't God's will. So you're saying God does not want to end hunger and homelessness. So I guess so.
correct. Yeah. I'm God and I cannot end that. If you end homelessness, we're not going to have charities that I can receive money for to support the homeless. I
Right.
need those charities running. So keep them homeless.
So so it's just a scam. And when people say they want to pray for me when they do it on my live,
Yes.
I say you can pray for me on one condition, that you will admit that your God is powerless when he doesn't do what you ask him to do, that he does not answer prayer. You have to admit that he does not answer prayer, and they will never do it. So they just want to pray for you, and they'll pray, "Oh, Heavenly Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, please open Jeff's mind to see that Jesus is the one true God." And then when they get done, I say, "Jesus is fake. Jesus never existed. He has no power, and you just proved it." They're like, "Oh, well, you've got a demon." You know, oh my goodness. So they're just brainwashed. That's all it is. Anything further, Russian? I got other folks wanting in.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just basically that. It's just like even maybe praying. It's just like maybe you're just praying to your own mind consciousness. So if you pray that you want a better life, you're just maybe really praying to yourself and maybe just try to prepare yourself. It's not really that
Well,
you're
but
gonna. It's not really that you're
Russian,
gonna get the superpower from another
well, but
source.
that doesn't work either. So that doesn't even work because in the past, my marriage now is pretty good. In the past, we've gone through some really hard times and really depressed about
Yeah,
things, and so I would pray that God would fix our marriage. We even tried. We would go to some therapy and things like this, and it just maybe minor changes, but then it would go back and we just weren't accomplishing things. And so I got to the point where I would just pray that God would just help me to accept things that I can't change. And then so
yeah,
so you can change your mind to stop being concerned about things that if you can't change it, to quit being concerned about it, and you can become more at peace with something. But that's not what prayer is supposed to be. Just convince
Right.
yourself to change your own mind.
Hey Jeff, are you still married? Did you get it right with your wife so y'all could be together?
Yeah, we're together. We're
Good.
happy.
I'm God. I need that tax return consolidated. I don't need you to get a divorce and get 2 tax returns for each individual to get more money from the government. We need to consolidate your taxes, your credit, everything. Stay married. I'm God.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've got to mail in a check to pay. I've never had to pay during tax. I've always got a return at tax season. This is the first year of my life that I'm going to have to mail in a check. Like I think it's $1,300 I got to mail in.
I didn't like it when I got to that point either, Jeff.
Because I think this year, I think my child tax credit is much less this year than it was in the past. Because I think I only got $500 for 2 kids. I've got 3 kids, and I think I got at least $1,000 a kid credit in even last year, but this
Yeah,
year
it
was
used to be
$500.
$1,000
Yeah,
a
and it
kid.
dropped to 500 instead of 1,000. So that's essentially the difference. Is the child tax credit changed? All right, Russian. Thanks for stopping in.
Okay, bless up.
Young Millie's next.
Yes, he's
He's
the
been
one that's been
going. He's
requesting.
been going to town in the chat. So
Yeah,
be
he
ready.
was requesting a song, a
Yeah,
soundtrack
how
to
y'all
play.
doing? Can I read a Bible verse? Is that all right?
Is it just one verse?
Yeah, I'll read just one verse.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I'm gonna read. Before I read it, I want to talk about Genesis, the book of Genesis, because it talks about the fallen angels and the Nephilim.
So can I read Spider-Man to you? Because it talks about men that can crawl up the side of buildings.
And Venom.
I
Young
mean,
Millie,
if you want to talk
just
about
because the
it,
Bible
it's your
talks about
life.
giants and angels, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean
you
it's
reading
good.
you reading your book to us is the same as us reading Spider-Man to you. That's what it means.
In fact, I need to go to Amazon and do a wish list for a Spider-Man comic book and see if anybody will buy me a Spider-Man comic book. So when this comes up, somebody says, "Can I read to you from the Bible?" I say, "Sure." Can I read to you from Spider-Man comic book? And I'll open it up and read some
Yeah, because
Spider-Man.
I found this interesting. Because how is there 8 billion people or close to billions of people on the earth if there wasn't a God? You feel me? Clearly, there was a creator. We just didn't appear out of thin air. So, logically
So
speaking, I
listen.
wouldn't even have to read the
Okay,
verse.
young
I
Millie,
wouldn't even
listen.
have to read the verse. That just makes more sense.
Wait, young Millie. if we didn't just appear out of thin air, that means God didn't create us out of thin air. So you're arguing against yourself. You see,
No,
I don't
I'm
believe that
saying
we
if
were
there
created
wasn't
out
a
of thin air.
God,
You
if there
do.
wasn't a God, we wouldn't see life around us. We wouldn't see all types of
That's
life
not
around us.
true. It's not
Because
true.
It's not true.
Because, all right, so everything that's ever been made, someone had to make it, like your computer, your cell phone,
That's not
TV.
true.
That's not
You-
Yeah,
true.
literally, yes, it is true.
Who made a tree? Who made a tree?
God, exactly. God
God.
made trees. God
Trees
made
grow
the earth. He
naturally
created the
without
heavens and the
anybody
earth.
creating them.
Exactly. Everything that's ever been made has someone behind it that was responsible.
That is
for making it.
not
Yeah.
true. When I can go outside, in fact, just imagine, you see those trees in the background? Who made those trees?
God.
Wrong.
Literally.
You absolute, ridiculous, nonsensical person. God did not make those trees. Those trees grew naturally without any intervention. We know how trees grow. You have a seed that gets planted, and it has to be planted in fertile soil, and it has to get water, and it has to get sunshine.
Thank
It
you.
does not.
So someone
There's no
planted the
ingredient
seed.
for
Exactly.
trees
Someone
that
planted
says
the
there must
seed.
be
Like I
a
said,
God.
someone, like you
No.
said, someone
No.
had
Jeff
to
could
do
plant
something.
it.
No.
Jeff could plant it. He could be God.
No.
Jeff could
It
plant
falls
trees.
on the ground. It falls on the ground and goes into the soil and starts growing. No hand touched it.
All right. So I'm going to read this Bible verse. It's Ezekiel 4. I'm going to start it right here. It says, this is him explaining seeing like a UFO. He says, I looked and I saw a
UFO.
windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human. And it literally goes on describing what the living creatures, he says, this is Ezekiel 15. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground besides each creature. When the living creatures move, the wheels beside them move. And when the living creatures rose from the
Okay,
ground,
so that's
the
enough.
wheels
Stop right
also
there.
rose.
That's
Wherever
enough.
the spirit would go, they would go, and the wheels
Young
would
Millie,
ride along with them.
that is enough. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was finished. So Ezekiel gets lifted into this flying wheel where he
Oh,
sees
yeah.
visions of the future from God. That's how
Yeah.
he wrote
Oh,
his prophecy
yeah.
in the Bible.
Yeah.
So you were
This
just talking
wheel
about
with
how there's no
eyeballs all
prophecies in
around.
the Bible,
Yeah.
right?
What makes
So
you think that's real, young Millie?
so
He's
just
saying
listen. Just
this
listen.
is UFOs now. That's what
Just
he's saying.
listen. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
predicted a
Oh my goodness.
UFO.
Young
Genesis
Millie.
6. In Genesis 6, it talks
Oh
about
my
how
goodness.
God created the heavens and the earth and how
He's
we were
brainwashed. He's
I cannot
brainwashed.
tolerate. This is what causes me to lose faith in humanity. When you read a book that talks about a wheel floating in with eyeballs all around, you say, oh my goodness, there's wheels with eyeballs floating in the sky? There are no wheels with eyeballs floating in the sky.
But the Bible says it. It
But
has
there's
to be
UFO. All right, Jeff, do
true.
you believe in UFOs? Basically, that's what we got to get down to. If you
So-
say yeah, then
Right.
he's right. But if
So-
you say no, it's wrong.
So UFO
There's
is
no
unidentified flying object. I believe that I can throw
Yeah.
a rock through the sky, and if someone else sees a rock flowing, they'll say that's an unidentified flying object. And I'm going through a rock.
Yeah.
Or if someone's flying a drone, especially if they do it at night and it's got a
The
little light on
drone,
it,
yes.
then,
Yes.
then someone's flying a drone at night and it has a light, and someone else looks up and sees a light flying around. They say, wow, what is that? That is an unidentified flying object. So, yes, there are things that go through the sky that other people don't know what they are, so it's an unidentified flying object. Do I believe that there are aliens from other planets that are flying spacecraft in our atmosphere? Absolutely not.
Okay. Yeah. So
I
there you go.
believe that there probably is human-like life on other planets, but they're so far away we can't communicate with them, and we'll never see them. There's no possible way that any life form that is even remotely similar to ours can travel through different solar systems and galaxies. It's completely impossible.
And we've been looking for years and
right,
didn't find
but-
nothing.
But the only thing the only way we would ever be able to interact with any other life form is if they were within our own solar system. If they were somewhere between, I mean, really Mars and Venus. Because if it was any further away from Mars or Venus, there's probably no possible way. In fact, I don't even know if it's possible to travel to Mars or Venus for
So we
any
need to
human
ask
life form.
young Millie
There's
who
definitely not
created.
yeah.
We need to ask young Millie who created his deity. How did his deity come into existence? Oh, it's
Well,
always been there.
you
It's
can't
always
ask
been there.
young Millie.
Mind. The human mind created
You
that
can't ask
deity.
young Millie anything.
The humans created it. Point blank period. Jeff is trying to tell you that humans created these freaking gods.
Right.
Period. Do you guys accept that? You have to.
And
That's
and
the
and we
second.
know that humans wrote the Bible and that humans
Yes.
write fictional stories. I mean, we see TV shows all the time, and we know that humans wrote the TV show, humans produced the TV show, and every single ridiculous, nonsensical story about men with blades that can grow out of their knuckles, or men that
Yeah.
can fly, that wear tights and have a cape and they can catch bullets with their teeth. That humans write fictional stories with fictional characters. They've always been able to do this. And when you read old stories, just because it's not a modern Superman or a man with metal coming out of his wrist, if it's a man that can raise the dead or heal the sick, or a man who sees floating rings with eyeballs all around it, this is fictional stories.
Yes,
They're
it's all
not true.
fictional.
What's
I
up?
believe the writers of these books didn't even intend for us to understand them as an actual biography. I figured that they intended to write it and have us be mesmerized by the legendary myths and creation of these amazing stories. I don't think they intended to be, this is literally real. They're throwing out the whole point of their book.
I think they did intend to control the minds of the populace with their lies. I believe they deliberately wrote lies, and they wanted to scare people into believing that there's some invisible man in the sky that's going to get them if they don't follow the rules. So I
Yep.
believe that. I don't
Watching
think
you
the authors-
24/7.
Me, I felt like it was what I said, but when people started believing the machinations, they started putting parts of the stories, like you said, to control them. That's what I believe. They started believing it, and they said, "You know what? We can control people with gospel."
Yeah,
And then they
these
started doing what
ancient
you said.
these
Yeah.
ancient people in the Near East, when an earthquake would happen, you ever heard this story when thunder would crack when you was a kid and people would say superstitious stuff like, "Oh, God's stomach is growling," when it
I
would
heard
thunder.
that he hit a strike in the bowling ball.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. So these people believed stuff like that. And so they would write it down in a book. And now you guys are believing the cracky stuff that they would write in the book about their
ancient
deities.
superstitions from uneducated people that attributed thunder to the gods bowling or
Because
whatever.
they didn't know a warm atmosphere was hitting a cold atmosphere and making a noise. They didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they took it upon a deity doing it.
Okay, Jeff. I just have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I know some atheists, but what I want to ask is that, do you believe in God, or you believe, or you don't believe in God, or there's God, but it's just wicked?
I don't believe that there is a God. And let me clarify and add, if there is a God, he obviously doesn't want to reveal himself or demonstrate his existence. But if there is a God that has control over the world that we live in, that would require that God to be evil. There is no possible explanation for there being a good God. Because of all the evil that takes place in this world, if there is a God, he must be evil. He must thrive on chaos and confusion, death, pain, and suffering. He must love it. And so I think it's far more likely that, the explanation for all the things that we see in this world is a naturalistic explanation, not some, intelligent designer. Because if you have an intelligent designer, he had to design slavery and grape and, unaliving and, mutations and sickness and disease and HIV and man, he's not a very nice designer if this is what he designed.
Okay. You said in your outline that the Bible is not true. Romans created Christianity. Heaven and hell are fake. Jesus never existed. Do you believe somebody can sit down and compose all the content of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation? Do you think it's possible for some people to sit down and just make up their stories? Is it
Yeah,
possible?
it was made up. These stories were made up over time by different people that were following the same, mindset that there's an invisible man in the sky. And the Bible's full of contradictions. The Old Testament contradicts itself all the time, saying that that animal sacrifice was required in one place, but then you get to Isaiah and Jeremiah and says, "Oh, God doesn't even delight in animal sacrifices. In fact, it says, I never even told you to do that." So that's contradictory. So different people wrote at different times saying animal sacrifice is required. No, it's not. So it's
So,
not consistent.
so what you're saying, in short, is that some people composed the Bible based on their own imaginations,
Yes.
and the New Testaments as well, from Matthew to Revelation. You just believe that Jesus never existed. There is no Paul. There is no Peter. There is no Apollo. There is no all the disciples. There is none at all.
Correct. So what country are you in, Ruffy?
Well, I'm in UK. I'm in UK. I'm in
Okay,
UK.
so you've seen some movies, right? You've seen, either Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Superman. You've seen some movies with fictional characters, right?
That's right.
So, Superman has a girlfriend named Lois Lane. Do you think Superman was real and that he really had a girlfriend named Lois Lane? Or is it just fictional characters in a fictional story?
But you know that Superman is a story. You know that it's not real.
Yeah. I know that the Bible is also just a story with fictional characters and a fictional story. It is the exact same thing. They didn't have TV and movies back in thousands of years ago. So they wrote fictional stories. And it's amazing that you and I and others will read ancient stories that are obviously fictional
Yes.
and think that their stories were real, but yet we can watch Superman or X-Men or Avengers. We can watch anything. We can watch Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, and we know
Avatar. The
that
movie
these are
Avatar.
fictional stories. But when you read an ancient story that's just as ridiculous and detached from reality, and you want to pretend or allow yourself to believe that those stories are true, it doesn't match up with reality.
Yeah, I used to believe large locusts were going to come out of the ground with the scorpion sting on them and sting men for 5 months long. And a man was going to become riding in a white horse on a cloud with a whole troop of armies behind him in the sky. I used to believe that nonsense too.
7-headed dragons.
Okay. You believe, well, we have these Israelite, we have the issue of Abraham and things like that, and the Jacob and things like that. And you still believe that all those ones are fictions.
There's no evidence that Abraham was a real person, that Jacob was a real person. There's no evidence in history that there were 12 tribes of Israel.
Well, what about the land of Israel? What about the Israelites we have today? So are they not real, or are they not from Abraham?
There are so there's no evidence that the people are descendant from Abraham. There is no evidence of that. There are people that claim to be descendants of Abraham, but they have no proof of it. This group of people have gone through probably the most extensive extermination campaign of any other group of people on earth. If the Bible was true, these people were destroyed by the Babylonians, by the Assyrians, by the Greeks, by the Romans. And then you get to 1940s, and these people were tried to be completely exterminated by the Germans. And so, just because there's a group of people that claim to be associated with the Israelites does not mean that they were. In fact, there's no evidence that they are. It's just you can identify from whatever you want. You can say, we've got we've got black Americans that say that they are the true Israelites, black
Yep.
Americans.
Yep.
And we've got, people that live in Israel now that their skin color more matches mine, but yet they'll have black hair and black curly hair, and they say they are God's people. But yet we've got, black skinned or dark skinned Americans say, no, we're the true Israelites. So, but neither one can prove it. So you can say that you're those people, but you have no proof of it. And so people are just fighting, the conflict between Israel and Palestine. They're fighting over their religions, but there's no evidence that either one of them knows where they came from.
Yeah. Do these people not know this book that everybody's reading is about Israel? It's Israel's religion. It has nothing to do with us. These people found an ancient book and they said, oh, we're going to make this book for the whole world and tell them it's all about them.
Well, that
And
is
that's exactly what happened. And people believe it today.
that is speculation, isn't it? What you just said now is speculation.
What is speculation?
What? That it's not about Israel?
But it's not true, isn't it? You say some people find some book somewhere and they just read it. I don't think that is true.
So I can prove the Bible is not true.
How can you what?
I can prove the Bible is not true. I can prove the Bible has contradictions. I can prove that the Bible justifies
I agree.
evil.
That what you have to understand about Bible, the Bible was written by quite a lot of people, and during compilation, during putting all this book together, there might have been some errors in it. Okay, I can agree with you, but for the mere fact that you said there is no God, the content of the Bible is not true, I will not agree with that. And you said that the Romans, they created Christianity. Okay, and I can't believe that, because the majority of those people founded Christianity, they are Jews.
That's not true. So let's talk about that for a second. So do you know what language the New Testament was written in?
Greek.
Greek. What language did the Jews speak and write in? What language is the Old Testament in?
Okay, now they just started with Hebrew language. Now they went to exile, and in exile they learned Aramaic. By the time they came back from Babylon, they started speaking two languages, Aramaic and Hebrew. Okay, then when they were colonized by the Romans, so they started to speak Greek.
And so when you're changing someone's language, you're changing their culture, right?
It's possible, but the
No,
Hebrew.
that's an absolute fact. When you change someone's language, you're changing their culture. That's an absolute fact. It's not a setup question. It's a fact.
You can't say it's fact.
Is language part of culture?
Well, I don't know much about that.
What language do you speak?
I speak English.
I think you speak another language. What other language you speak?
I speak Yoruba. That's my native language.
What is it?
It's a Nigerian language.
What is it?
It's a Nigerian language.
So you were born and raised in Nigeria, right?
That's correct. Correct, yeah.
And you had a culture in Nigeria. How old were you when you left Nigeria?
I think I left probably about 30 years or so.
Okay, so you were 30 years old. So you grew up with the Nigerian culture and the Nigerian language.
That's correct.
When did you learn to speak English?
Right from youth, right from when I was a small boy.
So you learned English in Nigeria.
That's right.
So you live in Europe right now?
Yeah, that's correct.
So is your culture now the same? Do you speak Nigerian in the Nigerian language in Europe? Do you speak that language?
I do because I have some people here who speak the same language with me.
When you go to the store and you buy things at the store, do you speak the Nigerian language?
If there are some stalls here that are run by Nigerians, when I go there, I speak Nigerians to them.
So if you go to a Nigerian store in Europe, that is a culture where they are speaking the Nigerian language. They're probably even selling food and things that are associated with the Nigerian culture. When you go to a European store, you speak English and you buy English type things because the culture is different between Nigeria and Europe, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
And so you speak a different language when you're in a different culture. Language is an intimate part. It's not the only part, but it is an intimate, required, necessary part of a culture. And when you're changing someone's language, you are absolutely changing their culture.
Okay.
It's not just the language that changes. There are lots of other things that create culture. The type of food that you eat, the type of clothing that you wear.
So what does that
so-
got to do with the Jews?
And so when the Jews were conquered and they were started speaking Greek, it's because the people who conquered them changed their culture. This is an absolute, indisputable fact. It is not even up for debate. When you
Yep.
get defeated in war and you start speaking the language of the people who won the war, your culture has been ripped away from you and been replaced by the culture of the winner of the war.
So what has that got to do with the New Testament?
The people who wrote the New Testament were the conquerors of the Jews. They conquered the Jews, changed their culture, changed their scriptures, changed their religion.
So
They
Change
were
the
the
story.
enemies of the Jews.
So that was
Yep.
a scripture.
Huh?
That was a scripture. You said they changed the scripture.
Their holy scripture, their quote holy scripture. What God told them was now being told through Greek speaking people instead of Hebrew speaking people. Because the Greek concept of God was different than the Hebrew concept of God. So that's why the New Testament is contradictory to the Old Testament. The
Yeah.
Old Testament says there's only one God. There is no other God that will be formed after me. He doesn't report to any God above him. There's no gods besides him. He is the only God and he is one. He is not three. He is one. But yet the New Testament comes along and now there's a Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And in the Old Testament, no one can die for the sins of another. But yet in the New Testament, Jesus can die for the sins of the guilty.
Yep.
It is a contradictory religion written by a different group of people who were the ones who destroyed the Jews. And then they gave them a new culture, a new religion in a new language and said, you can either conform to our worldview and our culture, or you will be thrown into outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, where the worm never dies and the fire is not quenched.
Yeah, there was no such thing as a hell in the ancient Hebrew culture. But all of a sudden, there comes an invention of a hell in the Greek culture.
Yep.
Because
Or
they
heaven.
believe,
So no life
Yeah.
after death at all.
right, no heaven either. That's correct. But all of a sudden, in the Greek New Testament, there comes into existence a heaven and a hell.
Because the Greeks believed in the afterlife. The Greeks believed
Yep.
in Hades. The god Hades was the god of the underworld.
Yep.
And Mount Olympus, Zeus was sitting up on Mount Olympus, which is an actual literal mountain. They looked up there and said, oh, that's where Zeus lives up there because he's up in the clouds.
And they
And so-
even brought in other cultures, traditions from other cultures, like Egypt with the lake of fire. Egypt is the one who created a lake of fire. The
Right.
pharaohs, when they would pass away, had to go through this lake of fire, and their heart would be weighed on a what is that they would put them on,
A
Jeff?
feather, like just a scale, and
Yeah.
they would put a feather
Yeah.
on one side, and your
Yeah.
heart had to be lighter than a feather to prove that you were worthy.
Right. So that was brought into the Greek New Testament from the
So what-
Egyptian culture.
So what about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Israel?
Okay. So which one are you talking about? You talking about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre or the Garden Tomb? Because there are two tombs that they are accepting money to tour and say this is where Jesus was. But yet, did you know that when the Romans would crucify somebody, the last thing they would ever do is allow them to be buried? Because the purpose of crucifixion was to leave their bodies to rot on a stick publicly and to forbid them from being allowed to be brought down and given an honorable burial. That is the main goal of crucifixion, to prevent burial. But according to the Bible, the fictional story of the Bible, Jesus was only on the cross for like 3 hours, and then they took him down and anointed him with oil and wrapped him up in burial cloth and sent him on into the afterlife in a glorious, honorable burial. That did not happen. They don't. So the fact that they sell tickets to tour 2 different tombs tells you that they don't know where even the tomb is. But when you look at history and see what the purpose of crucifixion is to prevent burial, then you say, well, there's no way that even if Jesus was alive and crucified, there's no way that they would have allowed him to be buried, because that is the main purpose. The main purpose for crucifixion was to prevent burial.
But somebody went to borrow the body, to ask for the body, sorry.
No, it is a fictional story, Rufy. Jesus never existed. Jesus never was crucified. Jesus was never put in a tomb. But they're selling tickets for you to tour 2 different tombs and say that that's where Jesus was, but he was never in either one of them. They're just selling tickets.
This one is lost. This man is lost. Trust me. It's lost.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, your wife said not to listen to the truth, so go somewhere else.
Is that what just happened?
Yeah, his wife said, this man has lost it. This man has lost it. And so he says, okay, gotta go. Because wife said, I can't listen to some man that said Jesus never existed. When I tell you that the purpose for crucifixion is to prevent burial, and then you still want to believe that this actually happened, that someone was only crucified for 3 hours and then given a proper, honorable burial in a tomb that had never been used by a man that is completely anonymous, this Joseph of Arimathea. So this guy that does not exist in history says, oh, I'll give this crucified victim an honorable burial in my brand new tomb that I've just hewn out of the rock with my spoon, and nobody's ever lived there before. No one's ever been buried there. I'll anoint him with 75 pounds of oil and then wrap him up in strips of cloth that will magically fuse together into one 14-foot cloth that we're going to find 1,400 years later and say that it was actually the burial cloth of Jesus. It is a fictional story. It did not happen. People wrote lies, and you believe lies. That is the truth. And it's time that we get out of believing in fiction and fairy tales and start dealing with actual truths.
You got the next. Okay, you got the next guest.
I just let somebody in. Marie Antoinette Kajigas. Hey, Marie. Are you there, Marie? So look at this. It says, no, it gives me comfort in hard times. So what you're saying is you find comfort in the eternal torture of everybody who disagrees with you. So when you feel bad, when you feel down, what makes you really feel better is saying, well, at least I'm one of the chosen few that God loves and is going to bring into the glory land after we die. And there's going to be millions and billions and trillions of people screaming in agony as they're burning in fire. But I find great comfort in knowing that God loves me more than you, and that even though I'm going through hard times now in this reality, at least I get to go to heaven when I die while you're suffering in fire. If you find comfort in the torture of others, then you've got a serious problem.
Marie, are you here? Marie, are you here? I think they accidentally.
Yeah, I'm dropping her.
Requested up.
I'm pulling up Philip Green. So Shannon says, host, do you have evidence against the resurrection? Absolutely, I've got evidence against the resurrection. So the only claims about the resurrection are what we have in the Bible, and the Bible is contradictory. So I've made videos on it. I've got several videos on this TikTok. I've got videos on my YouTube. I've got articles I've written on my website. And all you got to do is go read the Bible. Just read the accounts of the resurrection of Jesus and take notes. Get you a pen and paper and take notes. And just read the Matthew account of the resurrection. Take notes. Then go read Mark and take notes. And then go read Luke and take notes. Go read John and take notes. And then see all the differences. Matthew and Mark says that Mary saw an angel at the tomb who said, Jesus is not here, but has risen and gone to Galilee. Go tell the disciples that he will meet them in Galilee. They didn't see him in Jerusalem. They were just told by a woman to go to Galilee. Well, they didn't even go to Galilee and they didn't see Jesus. But Luke comes along and he says that Jesus never even appeared to Mary. He didn't tell Mary anything. He just appeared to these two men on the road to Emmaus named Simon and Garfunkel, or Simon and Cleopas or something. And it was in the Jerusalem area, and then he magically appeared before his apostles in Jerusalem and told them to stay in Jerusalem until they're endued with power from on high. And then, so just look, so they're contradictory. They are different. So the only testimony we have are contradictory stories by people, and then you say, study when these books were written. There is no evidence that Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John existed in the 1st century. Even though scholars will say that Mark was written in the 70s and maybe Matthew was written in the 80s and then John maybe in the 90s, they have no evidence for this. So you cannot trust scholars. That's a logical fallacy. It's called the appeal to authority. Just because an authority figure says something does not make it true. So if you want to know the truth, you have to ask these scholars, why do we date these books to the 70s, 80s, and 90s? What evidence do we have?
Yep.
And they don't have any evidence. They have none, because I've looked for it. I've watched them. I've answered these questions, and they have no physical evidence whatsoever that any of these gospels were written or that they existed in the 1st century.
They just the war, the Roman Jewish war is mentioned, or the temple is mentioned. That's the only thing they use.
Right. So the only dating point that they have at all, the only dating point, is when Matthew, Mark, and Luke talk about the destruction of the temple. And so, intelligent people cannot accept that without evidence that a book is predicting the future. And so they date the books after 70 CE because it talks about something that actually happened in a specific point in time. The temple was destroyed in 70. And so an intelligent person that has any integrity cannot, without evidence, say that something was written before something actually happened and it's predicting the future. Now, if we had manuscripts that dated prior to 70 CE and it was mentioning the destruction of the temple, we'd say, well, no, we do have evidence that these things were written prior to the event that it's predicting, because we have a reliable method of dating this manuscript to the 30s. If they had this, they don't. But if they had a reliable manuscript that dated to the 30s that actually mentioned the future destruction of the temple, we'd say, no, we have evidence that they predicted the future.
So Daddy says to look up Wesley Huff. You might learn something from him.
Yeah, Wes Huff would learn from me. So, so the reason they will date Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to 70s, 80s, and 90s is because they're appeasing Christianity. And they're saying we can't date it prior to 70 because it talks about an event that happened in 70, and it's irresponsible for us to say that it existed prior to an event that it predicts when we don't have any evidence to support that claim. And so they're just appeasing Christians. And they're saying, well, maybe they were written as early as they could possibly be written, which is 70s, 80s, and 90s. But they don't have any evidence for that. That is a concession. It is an appeasement. They're just trying to appease and concede the Christian belief. But yet the Bible is full of demonstrably false claims, like whoever believes in Jesus can heal the sick and that you'll get whatever you ask for in prayer. It's demonstrably false. Full of anachronisms and things that did not happen, things that were incompatible with history, such as giving Jesus a proper burial after a crucifixion. That is not something that's compatible with history. All right, what's up, guest?
Shannon, you're on the
Shannon.
air.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. But what I'm talking about, and the dates, I don't want to get into the dates because you're right. There's no, you can't really pinpoint the date. But here would be my argument. Just because some of the details of the resurrection are different from a different perspective doesn't mean the resurrection didn't happen. That's proof. Just like a witness on the stand. No, he's wearing a black shirt. No, it was blue. But they both are agreeing he did the crime. You see what I'm saying? So that would be my analogy of the resurrection. And one more thing. And when they said Jesus appeared to the 500, I'm specifically focused on the four Gospels. So when he said the five,
Then you can't talk about the 500 because the four Gospels do not mention the 500.
Yeah, it does.
No, it doesn't. That's in 1 Corinthians 15. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John do not mention the 500.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. But what I'm getting
I'm
at,
always right.
Paul wrote that in his letters. It would seem somebody like Josephus or somebody would say, "Hold on, my buddy's great granddad. They're claiming he was one of the 500, and it didn't happen." See, nobody wrote about that. Is what I'm saying. That would be
Shannon. Listen, nobody wrote. 1 Corinthians wasn't written until the 2nd century, so Josephus was dead. All the people that would have been alive at the time were dead when they wrote it. So nobody would have said, "Oh no, I was there. That didn't happen," because it was written 100 years later, and everybody that was alive was dead.
Well, I just gave Josephus for an example.
So Josephus, listen. Josephus didn't write a single word about Christianity or Jesus.
Are you sure?
Absolutely sure.
Well, he wrote about all kinds of different Jesuses, but not the Jesus that you think he wrote about.
Not the biblical Jesus. He did not write about Christianity or the biblical Jesus. He wrote about different people that were named Jesus, but they were not the biblical Jesus. And there is a short passage that is called the Testimonium Flavianum. This is definitely a reference to the biblical Jesus, but Josephus did not write it. It was added by Christians in the 4th century. So when Josephus didn't say a single word about Jesus or Christianity, and then Christians add the biblical Jesus to Josephus 300 years later, that's evidence that they inserted Jesus into history because he was not real.
Okay.
So look, they call that passage the Testimonium Flavianum. And it's a short little passage that says it was about this time there was a man, if it be lawful to call him a man, that was a doer of wonderful deeds, and he converted many Jews and Gentiles, and that he only taught the truth to those who loved the truth, and that he appeared to his disciples again. Oh no, it says he was the Christ, and he suffered some sort of penalty from, I think it mentions Pontius Pilate. I'm getting it mixed up with Tacitus. And he says then he showed himself again to them after 3 days, which is another contradiction. Jesus was not in the tomb for 3 days. Jesus was only in the tomb 1 day, according to the Bible. The Gospels say that Jesus was put in the tomb on Friday night, and that before the sun rose on Sunday, he was already out. So he was only in there Saturday. That's it. And the reason that nobody even saw him be in the tomb on Saturday, because this was supposedly, the Sabbath day, and nobody went there to check on him or anything. They just, sat at their house and twiddled their thumbs and praised God. And then they went on Sunday morning, but Jesus wasn't there. So nobody even confirmed he was in the tomb. Nobody even saw him in the tomb.
He wrote about another man named Jesus. And this Jesus was running up and down the streets of Jerusalem during the war, screaming, "Woe to Jerusalem!" for 7 years straight. And isn't that a coincidence that I believe it's in Corinthians? Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong. There's 7 woes to Jerusalem that Jesus gives to them in that story. just a coincidence that this Jesus was running up and down the streets for 7 years screaming, "Woe to Jerusalem." And at the very end, he got hit in the head with a rock and passed away.
Let me study on something. I hadn't studied in a while. Let me study back on. I'll get back with you.
All right, Shannon. You should go to my website or get my book.
I think Shannon's been here before.
Yeah, I have, and I'm.
So Shannon, I'm not blowing smoke here. I've studied for many years, and I'm a highly intellectual person who cares about the truth. And I was a Christian for 40 plus years. I believed in Jesus. I went to church. I gave to the church. I did everything. I went around telling other people about Jesus. I thought that was the purpose for life. But now I know that it's just a big scam. It's not true. It's all false. We don't get to go to heaven when we die. We don't go to hell when we die. That is all fiction. It is not a true story.
So we're finding out that Josephus was what was used by the people who created the New Testament.
Right.
They used Josephus' writings. It's been plagiarized. There's so many coincidences, similarities.
Like after the war in 70 CE, Josephus was walking around. Now listen, Josephus had a father named Matthias.
Yeah.
He was Joseph Bar Matthias. That was who Josephus was. Joseph Bar Matthias. And after the war in 70 CE, he's walking through Jerusalem and he sees 3 of his friends that are crucified together. And he asks Titus, or the boss man, "Can I have these bodies? I know these guys. These are my friends. Can I take them down off the cross?" And Titus says, "Sure, you can have them. If they're your friends, go ahead and take them down." But yet Josephus was supposed to be a prisoner of war himself, and now he's getting favors from the guy who conquered the Jews, which doesn't make sense. But he has 3 friends on the cross, takes them down. 2 of them die, and 1 of them remains, the one in the middle.
Yep.
And so Joseph Bar Matthias takes bodies off the cross, and 1 of them survives. Now, the Bible has a story about a man named Joseph Arimathea who does the exact same thing, who takes a body off the cross and he survives. And so this is not just a random coincidence. The story of the Bible was plagiarized from the story of Josephus. And there
the
are
book of
many
Revelation.
examples of this.
Yeah, even the book of Revelation. Shannon, I just did a series. I have 11 videos I made showing how the similarities between Revelation and Josephus, how whoever the authors are of Revelation, they plagiarized from Josephus. It's uncanny the similarities that are there.
Yeah, like the book of Revelation says that God's going to send this mountain to fall out of the sky and to hit these people and to destroy all his enemies. And Josephus talks about huge hailstones that were hurled by the Roman artillery over the walls, and these huge 100-pound or 100-talent rocks were bright white, painted white so they could see them, flying over the walls and hitting people. It's exactly the same. The book of Revelation, the plagues that God sends on his enemies in the book of Revelation are the exact same things that were written about by Josephus in a literal war between the Romans and the Jews in 70 CE.
Yeah.
Talks about, one of the plagues that God's going to send is that he's going to turn the rivers and the seas to blood, and all the fish and living things in the water are going to die. Josephus talks about that too. Josephus says that all the streams in the water was completely red with blood because there was so much death.
Uh-huh. He said the blood was so deep that it put out the fires. And Revelation, I believe it's in Revelation, specifically says it's as high as a horse's bridle.
Right. So Revelation says the blood will flow through the streets up to the horse's bridle. So it's like, 4 or 5 foot rivers of blood flowing through the streets of Jerusalem. Josephus says that the blood flowed through the streets of Jerusalem so thick and heavy that it put out the fires of the buildings. So they just, we're talking about the city flowing with rivers of blood.
He talked about the 2 witnesses that were refused burial, all that.
Yep. Yep.
All right, well, I'll look into it. I
All
haven't
right.
studied on that in a while, but
Well, so between Patrina and my videos and the resources that we have available, and I know you don't want to believe what we say, but we're just talking about the evidence. We're just providing the evidence. And so you can't disprove either one of us because we're just pointing out the facts and the evidence.
Yeah, it's crazy, Shannon. When I first started reading it, Josephus' works, I thought, man, this sounds just like Revelation because I had read Revelation all my life. I mean, my whole existence was about the end times. And so when I read The War of the Jews, I was like, wow, this is just like Revelation. Revelation got it right. It was true. But then as I started studying it more and more, and I was like, well, Revelation was written after Josephus. Josephus was written first. So it had to have been plagiarized from Josephus. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I believe that crap.
Yep.
okay, fair enough. I'll look into it and get back with you. I see you on here a lot,
All
but
right. Well, thanks for being a respectful person. Thanks.
yes, sir.
So thank you, Shannon. So Clint in the chat, what's the name of the book about Josephus? So the one I'm referring to is called War of the Jews.
Right.
Book 6 has a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in there.
What about the 666? So the mark of the beast is something that says it will be put on your forehead or on your right hand. The only thing that the Bible mentions that is something on the forehead or the right hand is when in the Old Testament they were told to keep the law forefront on their minds and on their hands. And so it says this is why in the New Testament it talks about these Pharisees that would have make their phylacteries broad and and they would wear little boxes on their head and put it on little boxes on their wrist, and it would have little scriptures in it. And so when the New Testament is demonizing the Jews, the entire New Testament is demonizing the Jews. The Gospels, Jesus is rebuking the Jews. All of the Pauline letters, Paul is saying that the Jewish law is only for weak-minded people that are weak in faith. None of that stuff matters anymore, but it's only for weak people. So the book of Revelation is talking about the destruction of the city where the Lord was slain. It's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was where the Lord was slain in the fictional story. And so the entirety of the New Testament is demonizing the Jews. And so the mark of the beast would be the people that wore the symbols on their head and on their hands of Judaism. That's what the mark of the beast is, most likely.
Yeah, it's actually in the book of Exodus. I believe it's Exodus 13, if I remember correctly. It talks about how these people wore this sign on the middle of their forehead and on their hand so they would remember what God did for them. The Teflon or the phylactery is what it's called. The bigger the box, the more righteous they were because they could keep more laws.
If Christianity were real, they wouldn't have to threaten you. That's true. People were unalived until Christianity was accepted. People were unalived in the name of Christianity both before and after it was accepted. So, I mean, if you just read Irenaeus, who was a church father writing in the late 2nd century, the name of his book is Against Heresies. So there were people that were teaching things that he didn't want others to believe or be taught. And so when they identified a heretic, these heretics were punished. If you were not teaching what the Romans, and Irenaeus was a Roman, every church father was a Roman. Everyone. Polycarp, Irenaeus, Justin Martyr, every single church father was a Roman. Irenaeus said that the most ancient church that was started by Peter and Paul was in the city of Rome, not Jerusalem. The Jews did not create Christianity. The Jews rejected Christianity. The Jews were the ones that were called the heretics. The Jews were the ones that were getting destroyed in war. The Jews were the ones that were saying that Christianity was not true, and they were getting unalived. and
Yeah, so
eradicated.
when I did a study on the Textus Receptus, that kind of opened my eyes a lot when I realized, wow, this Textus Receptus, which means the received text, when it went out amongst everybody, it wasn't even the correct manuscripts that were used, but it was accepted because it already had been put out into society. They didn't bother changing it or redacting it. They just left it out there and people went from there. So in the beginning it was wrong.
Right. So the Textus Receptus, which is what the King James Bible is based on, was not even translated. A guy named Erasmus, one guy named Erasmus, had authority uh, from the king to create a Greek manuscript of the New Testament, and he only used 5 manuscripts as his basis, and all of them were like 12th century manuscripts. They were all Byzantine text, and he had no early manuscripts. He only had late manuscripts, and he only had partial manuscripts. Some of his manuscripts had Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Some of them had Acts. Some of them had Pauline letters, and some of them had a portion of Revelation, but none of them had the entirety of Revelation. So he didn't even have the entire Greek manuscripts. And his primary goal was, I think, to create. It wasn't even to create an English translation. It was to create a Greek manuscript, a collection of Greek manuscripts to compare against the Latin manuscripts. But they used his Greek manuscript to create an English translation, and it was based on 5 partial 12th century manuscripts. And so this is the reason why later we started developing critical scholarship to look at older manuscripts. And this is when you start getting the NRV and the ASV and the NIV and all the other English translations after the King James, because they actually looked at the older manuscripts and they could see that. And if you look, I like this NIV that I've got because it actually tells you that in Mark chapter 16, this was not in the original oldest manuscripts. It was added at some point. And so these critical Bibles will actually tell you when they added. If you look at 1 John 5:7, in any critical translation, it will tell you that this verse does not appear in any of the oldest manuscripts. It's only after the 14th century that this verse appears in any manuscript. So they definitely change things over time. And if you get the right Bibles, they will tell you that they have evidence that these stories were changed and added over time. What's up, Oshun?
Oshan?
Oshun?
Yeah, how you doing, Jeff?
Good.
So I had a quick question for you. So I know you heard of the Geneva Bible.
Yeah,
You heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did some light research. So I'm basically asking you a question. So it was saying that the Geneva Bible was the words was taken out of it before the King James version came about. And with that being said, I was kind of skeptic of the Bible in general, because it says if you add or take away, I guess you would surely be damned or something. And I was just curious on what you thought about that, if you have done any,
Well, so I'm not real familiar with the Geneva Bible. I've heard of it a lot. I just haven't ever done a deep dive study into it. But that mention that don't add or take away, that's only in the book of Revelation, and people think it's applying to the whole Bible. But yet, technically not. Petrina always says that, this is a note that to the scribes, threatening the scribes to quit changing stuff, because the scribes were changing stuff, and so they needed to add a thread in there to quit changing stuff. Oh, but so it's obvious that God doesn't care when you add or take away, because we have evidence that things have been added and taken away. In fact, when the 1611 King James Bible came out, it had 80 books. We only have 66 now. They went and took 14 books out.
Right,
So
right.
God didn't punish those people. Well, I mean, you can say, well, they're all dead now, but they just died natural causes, just like everybody else. God didn't punish people or send any plagues from heaven because they took 14 books out.
Mm.
So there's, so whenever you have these threats that God's going to get you if you add or take away, and we have evidence that people have added and taken away from the Bible all the time, then you can say, well, that threat is a useless, vain threat. God is not behind the threat. So what you have to do, whenever you realize that when people have to threaten you to believe something, that this is a very strong clue that something is not true, that they just want to control you with fear. So when you truly are ready for the truth, and you're not any longer afraid of asking questions because you're afraid God's going to throw you in hell or send a plague or something like that, then you can truly be free and ask whatever questions and research whatever you need to research. It's that fear that prevents people from even asking the right questions.
Man, I have a friend, and he's a Bible thumper, or whatever name you want to use to describe that. And it's a part in the Bible that says it's stating something about women shouldn't wear man apparel and men shouldn't wear women apparel.
Yeah.
And this guy have had like a crazy situation with his wife, he's telling me about, based on that. And like, if he doesn't want her to wear like no jeans or anything that's, I guess,
I
that's
was in a
similar.
religion like that.
Yeah, and I was like, man, if this, if the Bible was not what it says, what it's supposed to be, then what was all that for? Will the relationship even last if it ever comes to him that way?
Yeah, women didn't have rights. Women were property back then, so they had to not tempt any man by wearing a pair of shorts or sitting on the same pews as the men, because if the men would get any kind of little sniff of their pheromones while they was in the service, they would be distracted from the teachings of the Word of God. So the women had to sit completely on the other side of the church, be quiet. They have questions, ask her husbands when they go home. So I always questioned that as a Christian. Why are we not following that today? Why do I not have to cover my head when I pray? I mean, it says I can't braid my hair, I can't wear expensive clothes or fine jewelry, but women are doing it all the time, and they always give the excuse, well, that part's not for us today, but all the other stuff's for us, like the tithing that it talks about in the Old Testament. That's for us today for sure.
Oh, the tithing?
Yeah, giving money to the church. Yeah.
You don't think nothing is wrong with that?
Yeah, there's wrong with it. A lot wrong.
So you're saying that something is wrong with it? Okay.
So what she's saying is the parts that they don't like not allowing women to dress nice and wear jewelry, they ignore that part. But the part that says you need to send money to the church, they think that part's required because it's awful convenient. You need money, so we'll accept the money part, but we'll say that it's okay for women to wear fine jewelry nowadays. So they're picking and choosing whatever's convenient for them.
Right. Wow. Yeah, man, that was my question. I ain't want to be up here too long. I was just curious about that because, I mean, I had got into wars with this guy about, like women apparel, and
he's gonna. I feel sorry for his wife because he's going to have a bad relationship, and he's going to use the Bible as his excuse to dominate his wife, and he's going to have a bad go of it.
I'll give you some ammunition, Ocean. The next time he brings that up, take him to the very first chapter in that book and ask him who the letter was written to. Because it's a letter that he's reading,
Oh
a
yeah.
personal letter. And ask him if he would come to your house, open up your mailbox, get a letter that was written to you, erase your name and put his name on it and say it's to him. Because that's what he's doing.
Yeah, tell him to take your electric bill, even though it's addressed to you, and apply it to himself and make him pay your electric bill.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to read that because, I mean, man, I don't know. I was trying to basically tell him, look, man, don't sabotage your marriage because you really don't know the meaning or what that mean, or even if the book is the truth. But
Let me give you another a good counter to his argument. So you can turn to Mark chapter 16, verse 17, that says, "Whoever believes in Jesus will have signs that follow them. They can cast out demons, speak in tongues, handle venomous snakes, drink deadly poison, and nothing will harm them. And they can lay their hands on the sick and they will recover." You say, if you think that a woman, can't speak or wear nice clothes or jewelry or braid her hair or wear shorts or pants, if you think that part applies to you, let's look at Mark chapter 16 that says you should have signs that follow you as a believer in Jesus. You should be able to lay your hands on the sick and they will recover. So let's go to a hospital and see if you can heal sick people by touching them. And if you can't, this is definitive proof that the Bible is not about you. It's not that you're not the one it's talking to. And the truth is nobody's ever been able to do that. But this is how you can prove to a person today who thinks the Bible is true and applicable to them that it's not. All you got to do is go to a hospital and try to heal somebody by touching them, and it won't work. And so you say, well, the Bible's not true.
Yeah, tell him to go try to pick up a copperhead or a rattlesnake. See how that works out for him.
That's a little dangerous, though.
Yeah.
Well, you just said that he can drink poison and it won't be
Yeah.
harmed, right?
That's what it says.
Well,
Yep,
right,
it says
but listen, you can't. So you could wind up in prison for doing that. So if
Yeah.
you encourage people to do things that can cause harm, then you can wind up being held liable in court. So I wouldn't advise that. Let's just try to get them to go heal some people, because you can't get in trouble for that. You say, hey, the Bible said he could heal people. I wanted to see if he could heal people, and he couldn't heal them.
I mean, it does says it in the Bible. That's my proof, right? That he
Yep.
can drink poison, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
just
just
don't
being
let
funny,
him record you saying that. Don't give him any evidence that you said it.
no, I get it. I understand. Yeah, man. I've been hearing you talk about this for a while, and I have ran across a lot of people that said, the Bible was man driven and not God. And I was like, man, everybody just can't be saying this. I have read it, but I don't have full understanding. I will say that, but there's a lot of contradictory in there. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it.
And so you sound like an African American. So the Bible justifies slavery and says that slaves are supposed to obey their masters. Even when they beat them unjustly, you're still supposed to just humbly submit to your slave owner. So, if for people of your race, you ought to be able to quote a couple of those verses and say, whoo, this book is obviously not from God, not any God that deserves to be praised and worshiped. So that should be, so for Patrina, if you read the verses that talk about the oppression of women, she can say, wow, I can't believe that any good God or God is worthy of praise that would treat women this way. And for you can read the verses that talk about slavery and say, I can't believe that any God who would approve of this would be worthy of praise. It's far more likely that humans wrote this than any God. And so then you can go out that way. To me, I mean, since I'm not woman or black, I just like the truth, and I have compassion for women and slaves, people that were slaves, or even your ancestors that were slaves, and I say this is obviously wrong, and any God that would justify, bad behavior is not a God worthy of praise.
Well, men aren't supposed to shave their beards.
Yeah,
Well,
I heard that several times too.
the Jews aren't supposed to shave the sides of their beards, so I'd be fine.
Yeah, it does say sides. You're right.
Yeah, so I'm fine. I mean, I'm acceptable according to the Bible, and I'm a guy with a beard. Like we're good guys.
Yeah, I have seen that. The part I have read that part where it was talking about slaves, and I questioned that a long time ago. I've been on panels, other TikTok panels, where they was, saying basically that they wasn't saying quite what you're saying. They were saying it in another way, but basically the same meaning, that is, is not the real thing.
Yeah, it's all nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just evil ways to control and manipulate people through fear. The people who wrote the Bible, the entire Bible, both Old Testament and New Testament, were leaders of people that wanted to control them through fear. So they created the imaginary bad guy in the sky that's going to get you if you don't follow their rules, if you don't give them your money. The Levites were the priests, the godly men, and they had to receive a tenth of everything that the Jews had. And so these people became very rich and powerful. And so, that is a good indication of who would create the story, is whoever benefits from it. And in the New Testament, they won't, Jesus tells people, oh, you got to believe in me or you go to hell. And if someone slaps you in the face, you ought to let them slap you on the other side also. Don't ever retaliate. Always pay your taxes. Make sure that you pay your taxes and don't rebel against the government. Like, well, who benefits from this organization? It's the government. So the Romans who destroyed the Jews were slapping them in the face, and then they were being told, well, if someone slaps you in the face, you ought to let them slap the other side too. What kind of advice is that? Just let them beat you to death.
Man, I have met a preacher, so-called preacher, and this guy got incarcerated for let me make sure I tell the story right. He wanted to get a playground or something that was for the kids, for the congregation.
Yeah.
And one of the people in the congregation knew someone that worked in the bank. So they helped get this thing, situated where he can get the loan. Well, when this guy got the loan, he went and bought a whole bunch of drugs, bought I don't know, was it some type of car? It was a model, present day model car at that point in time, and got a woman pregnant on his wife as soon as he got the money. And I was like, and this is what I suppose.
He's the man of God, right? He's the man of God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is crazy, So I started having like little doubts then. I was like, man, I gotta just do research and hope the truth, comes to me.
Even when I was a Christian, still going to church, and I had a master's degree and a career, and I struggled to survive. And I'm supposed to be giving money to this preacher. This preacher's taking his kids to Disney World every year, and I'm like, dang, I can't take my kids to Disney World. And I'm giving this guy money, and I'm struggling, and he's going to Disney World.
Right.
Something's wrong here.
Ocean, I don't know if you know some of these multimillionaire preachers or not, but I was on stage with the great Jesse Duplantis. He's a multimillionaire preacher. My husband went and picked him up in his private jet. He got inside the jet and he looked at my husband and he said, "God's been good to Jesse." He came and he spoke to the people in the services for 1 hour. Do you know how much he made? $40,000 in 1 hour.
1 hour?
Well, Petrina,
1 hour.
I've heard you say this a bunch of times. Why were you on the stage?
Because I was part of the leadership of the church.
So you were just standing there, or what? What were you doing?
Yeah, sitting in a chair.
Wow. That's sort of like some of the I live in the state of Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and there's a lot of that going on around here too. You know, I went to a church, and the church looked like a concert stadium.
Mm-hmm.
It had ATM machines everywhere. It was just huge and gigantic. And I'm like, man, like, is this is the atmosphere that, you know, that they preach in now? Because it looked more like a show to me.
Yeah, it is. It's
You know,
entertainment.
yeah, so yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, man. I appreciate you letting me up, and I'm gonna drop down on you guys.
All right. Thanks for stopping in.
Thanks for
All right.
joining. You've been a good guest.
Thank you.
Jose Leo. Come
Okay.
on. I got him.
They dropped.
Oh well, they disappeared. That was last guy in the box.
So while we're sitting here, I looked up what gods in Greek culture unalived for the forgiveness of the people. And so I guess in the Greek culture, they had a lot of belief in a god giving forgiveness and restorative power to the people. I guess Asclepius, is that how you pronounce it?
I say
Was
Asclepius, but whatever.
Asclepius. He was one of the gods that gave restorative power and forgiveness to the people. So this was something that was well known in the Greek culture. A
Yeah.
deity forgiving you for your
And
sins.
Asclepius was his primary thing was his gift of healing, and he started out as a regular human, but he was a good healer as a human. And then the story I read, Zeus and Hades get in a fight because Asclepius is throwing their system out of whack because he's allowing more and more people to live, which makes Zeus is managing the living people. He's like, wow, we're getting too many people here. I can't hardly manage all these people. And Hades is like, dude, my caves and underworld is going dry. I don't have enough people down here. So it was out of whack. Too many living people, not enough dead people. And so Hades unalives Asclepius, but then they feel guilty about it for some reason afterwards, and then they resurrect him and bring him back, and now he's a demigod now instead of a human. And then somehow he makes a deal to bring his mother to Mount Olympus with him. So then he brings his mother. You know how Jesus tells John in the book of John, or tells another disciple, "Behold your mother. This is now your mother. Take care of her." So Asclepius has a kind of similar story where he gets resurrected, and then he wants to take care of his mother.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was such a thing in Greek culture.
Did you mean to join, Jose?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was paying attention, but then I got a message and I was texting when you let me in and I fell by accident. I'm so sorry. I was paying attention to all that you said, and lately I've been at work pretty bored because there's nothing much to do lately, and I've been joining some lives, especially of this sort. And I've really been trying to open the eyes of some Christians that go into these atheist-themed lives. Atheists, or you can call it anti-Christian or whatever. And I've really been struggling, and I noticed something is it seems to me, and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but it seems to me like in America, people don't seem to learn a lot about the history that rose Christianism.
That's true.
Correct.
Yeah, like
They don't encourage you to look into that at all.
yeah, and like I see all these comments of Christian people in the comments, and I really encourage everyone to like put their Bibles aside for 1 second and look at history. Look at how Christianism rose to what it is today. It started with an emperor, Constantine II, that turns to Christianism, illegalizes all the other religions, persecutes those who practice other religions. Later, it turns into crusades and then into Inquisition. And even today, people are ostracized and persecuted by Christians.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not going to, make much impact because these people, first of all, when you say set your Bibles aside, they're saying I'm not because they're actually worshiping the Bible as if it's their God. So you're asking people to set aside their God and look at reality, and most people don't want to do that. They want.
It really bothers me that people look at the Bible as an historical document when so much of what is there is historically a lie. Like the Egyptians never enslaved the Hebrews. Jesus probably didn't exist. The Romans have 6 records of 6 different men that were named Yahweh. And one of them was crucified by Pontius Pilatus, but there is no development after that by anyone else except the Bible.
So I don't think what you just said is true. Unless you're referencing Tacitus, because there's no record of the Romans crucifying anybody under Pontius Pilate, except for a one-liner in Tacitus.
No, there is a Roman document. I think I'll have the source for it. I can send it to you.
But I think you're talking about Tacitus, so I think that's the only one.
Okay, I need to Google it, but I was pretty sure there is a document that talks about a Yahweh of Nazareth, that Pontius Pilatus asked the Judaic people what they wanted to do with him, and the Judaic people decided that they wanted to execute him.
Yeah, so I don't think that record exists. That's in the Bible. The Bible is the one that says that. I don't think there's any historical record that says that.
All right, I'll Google it later.
Okay, but so if you find it, come back and let me know, because I don't think that exists.
Yeah, I will Google it up later. I'm on one device, so I can't really leave the live.
Okay.
But even if that is the case, the Bible was written thousands of years ago, translated several times, always by men. There is no way that what's there is truth in any way.
If God was real, we wouldn't have to read 2,000-year-old book that's been translated and mistranslated and added and changed. He could actually just demonstrate his existence to us instead of expect us to believe an ancient book.
Yeah, exactly. And there are over 10,000 religions in the world, most of them older than Christianism. Like, I don't understand where this bigotry of believing that their God is the one true God and everyone else is doomed comes from.
It's actually just brainwashing from youth. And, in America, are you in America? What country are you in?
No, I'm from Portugal.
Portugal. So
yeah.
In America, it's primarily Christian. And it's not exclusively Christian, but primarily, I think. So you're highly likely to be raised in a Christian home or surrounded by Christian influences if you're born in America. So
in Europe, it's pretty much the same. In Europe, it's pretty much the same. Just maybe the Catholic Christianism is the biggest one. It's where I was raised, and it is very damaging.
Yeah. I think Catholicism is not as strong. Protestantism, I think, is more strong in America. I think Catholicism is strong, like in Mexico, but
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It is stronger in Mexico. It's stronger in Brazil as well. Catholicism, actually, if you look into it, it is very much pagan because they worship all these saints and different deities. It's insane. But still, I urge the people that are commenting, like defending Christianism, think about your children. They're being raised being told that there's something wrong with them and they're sinners and they're gonna suffer in life, that is just an awful way to raise your child.
And that was a critical moment when my oldest child actually asked me a question about the possibility of her going to hell. That was a critical moment in my deconstruction. I'm like, my stepfather died in 2006, and he was not a Christian by my definition, or really by anybody's definition. And when he died of lung cancer, I had a hard time believing that God would send him to hell. It's like he wasn't a Christian. He was a pretty good dude, just a uneducated, good old boy. And I was like, I'm going to church, and everybody at my church would tell me that he wasn't a Christian and he's going to go to hell. But I'm sitting here thinking that I just don't think a good God would do that. And I was a Christian in 2006. But when my child, who I raised from birth, asked me what she has to do to go to hell, that was a tipping point. Like, there's nothing you could do to go to hell. So this is obviously, a lie. And so now let me figure out who told the lie and why. And then I found out.
I'm very glad for that. How long have you been outside of Christianity, let's say?
I say I was 46 years old. I'm 48 going on 49 now. So it's been at least 2 years that I've been completely out of Christianity. 2 years. That's not very long.
No, it's not, but I think it's really good to see, like, even I'm not young, but I'm not old. I'm 28, but it's really good to see, like, the generation of my parents also waking up a bit and, like, realizing how much suffering comes from the Bible and Christianism in society.
So I would say in 2017, which that's been 7 years at least, that's when I was becoming a preterist. And to me, becoming a preterist, which believes that Jesus returned in 70 AD at the destruction of the temple, that Jesus already returned, that he's not ever coming back in the future, that is another critical moment where you're saying the mainstream Christianity is not true. It's not accurate. It's not even what the Bible says. So when you're realizing that Christianity, Catholicism, and Protestantism is not true, then
I would expand that to all the Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, I would expand it to every religion of any kind. Hinduism, Buddhism, any ism there is just a human philosophy that people have got together, and most of it is due to their culture. I mean, if you're in Saudi Arabia, your culture is different than if you're in India or China or America. And so people just create philosophies based on their cultural adaptations. And, people are susceptible to believing in gods and invisible men in the sky because we're gullible. So I just don't believe that there is an invisible man in the sky of any kind. I don't believe we get reincarnated. I believe we're physical beings that are on a physical planet that's a speck of dust floating through the universe. And it's amazing that we get to live and experience this life, so we ought to make the most of this time that we have to experience life. But when we die, it's all over. You have no conscious existence in heaven or hell, or you don't get reincarnated. You're just a speck of dirt floating through space. So enjoy it while you can.
I can completely agree with that. But I do think there are religions that were kind, especially if we look into the older religions, pre-Abrahamic religions, like the paganist religions, where people would worship nature and rivers and animals, and they valued being kind to each other more than anything else. And the fact that all these pagan religions could go to each other's lands and share their gods and beliefs, and there was never religious war before, that to me just tells me it is a problem that mostly affects the monotheistic religions.
So you reminded me of like the Native American religions. I believe that they did worship nature, and that they would not do things that would pollute their drinking water because it would be disrespectful to nature and to themselves. Now they still fought wars and stuff, but that would be for territorial reasons.
Yeah,
It's
that's
essentially just
human
like
nature.
when a stray lion wanders into the territory of a different pride of lions. There's gonna be a fight, but lions, even though they're eating antelope and stuff, they're not just unaliving all antelope for the sake of the thrill of the hunt. They only hunt what they need, and they take the weakest out of the lot, and they eat, they survive, and then they want the antelope to live so they can eat in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And most pagan pre-Christian religions, like Native Americans, like the Celtics, like the Norse, they worship the earth because the earth, it is what gives people life. After all, you need the planet to survive. The planet doesn't need you, but you need the planet. And it's really sad to see that Christianism took over the world basically and deleted that from people's mentality, and people usually just don't care.
I think at some point in the future, and I hope it's soon, there will be a massive shift away from all religions, and we will just do what is beneficial for humanity and for prosperity of life. Because
I really hope so.
And even that includes the end of all wars and militarization of the world. So we need to realize that we're all just humans trying to live, and we ought to help each other live prosperous instead of unaliving each other for ridiculous reasons, especially religious reasons.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Unfortunately, the way the world is going, I don't see it going very well anytime soon. But I hope you're right, because we need that. We need peace. And there's this quote that I saw recently. It's only when good people get angry that the world changes. And I think the good people are just trying to hold on. And we should actually get angry and change the world for the best.
I like that quote because people keep asking me why I'm angry, and I keep saying, "Why aren't you angry?" I'm angry. Yes, I'm angry because the world is being lied to, and the rich and powerful are living lives of luxury, and the good people of the world are just trying to survive. Yeah, I'm angry about it.
I completely respect
our presidents, before they get into the office, swear on this book.
Yeah, that for me is I really thought, is there a law of separation of state and church in America?
Yeah.
Okay, because that does not happen over here. You don't swear on anything. Like when you go to court.
It really shouldn't happen here either. I don't know why it's allowed.
Even when you go to court in America, you'll put your hand on the Bible and say, "I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God." I'm like, what in the world? This is in an American court system.
What happens if you say you're an atheist in court?
I don't know.
Okay,
they instantly think you're going to be a liar, that you're not going to tell the truth.
Wow. So, if I was going to court and said I'm an atheist, there's a probability that I will be wrongfully judged because of that.
Yes. Yes.
That's insane. That is insane.
Yep.
Wow. In Portugal, what happens is I had a case in court once, and they make you swear on your honor, but it's just a formality. They don't really make a big deal out of it. Anyway, thank you for having me. I just wanted to share my input a bit. And
Thank you, Jose. You were a good guest. I sent you a follow.
Thank you so much. I'll follow you back. Bye-bye.
If anybody else wants to come up, click on the guest request button. Let's tap these screen. Jeff's only up to 19K likes. Can we get him up to 25K? I mean, how hard is that to get him up to 25 or 30?
Well, let's just hold off right there because I think I'm going to shut down. I'm going to heat up some lunch or whatever.
Oh, man.
30, Jeffrey.
I may go back live again later, but I'll just shut down for right now since we got a little break. Y'all get Trina a follow. She might kick off a live or something.
Maybe I'll do one. I can't do much anyway. I'm kind of stuck in my situation, so maybe I'll just start up a live.
All right, I'm gonna shut down for now. I'll catch you guys later.
Okay. Have a good day.